The only revolution based on loving your enemy is the Negro Revolution. The only revolution in which the goal is a desegregated lunch counter, a desegregated theater, a desegregated park, and a desegregated public toilet. You can sit down next to white folks on the toilet. That's no revolution. Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. The white man knows what a revolution is. He knows that the black revolution is worldwide in scope and in nature. The black revolution is sweeping Asia, sweeping Africa. It's rearing its head in Latin America. The Cuban Revolution, that's a revolution. They overturned the system. Revolution is in Asia. Revolution is in Africa. And the white man is screaming because he sees revolution in Latin America. How do you think he'll react to you when you learn what a real revolution is? You don't know what a revolution is. If you did, you wouldn't use that word. A revolution is bloody. Revolution is hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. And you sitting around here like a knot on these folks, no matter how much they hate me. No, you need a revolution. Who ever heard of a revolution where they lock arms, as Reverend Klieg was pointing out beautifully, singing, "We shall overcome"? Just tell me you don't do that in a revolution. You don't do any singing, you're too busy swinging. It's based on land. A revolutionary wants land so he can set up his own nation, an independent nation. These Negroes aren't asking for no nation. They're trying to crawl back on the plantation. When you want a nation, that's called nationalism. When the white man became involved in a revolution in this country against England, what was it for? He wanted this land so he could set up another white nation. That's white nationalism. The American Revolution was white nationalism. The French Revolution was white nationalism. The Russian Revolution too, yes, it was white nationalism. You don't think so? Why you think Khrushchev and Mao can't get their heads together? White nationalism. All the revolutions that's going on in Asia and Africa today are based on what? Black nationalism. A revolutionary is a black nationalist. He wants a nation. I was reading some beautiful words by Reverend Klieg pointing out why he couldn't get together with someone else here in the city. Because all of them were afraid of being identified with black nationalism. If you're afraid of black nationalism, you're afraid of revolution. And if you love revolution, you love black nationalism.
Sorry, kings and queens. Can you hear me now? All right. Tendam Wadi, be thankful unto the mother, father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Muzimu Mokuro. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tomi, Abibi Fahodie, African liberation and African power for all African people. I hope ones and ones are good. Sorry about that. There was a little technical hitch with the MIC, but that should be resolved right about now. So yeah, hoping that everybody's good. We're here because I've had a few conversations over the last few days, yeah, which was largely facilitated by the fact that I was asked to present on Pan-Africanism as a part of Brother Garfield, who is the author of the book Misconceptions of the Hebrew Israelites, um, and the Dagger Squad, one of the main people within the group called the Dagger Squad, um, to participate in his Black History Month series 20 for 20. Yeah. So there's been a lot of discussion around Pan-Africanism recently in a lot of the channels that are connected to Brother Sarnetta and so on and so forth. Yeah. And so I accepted the invitation and delivered a presentation, which you can go watch. The link is in the description if you so wish. And that presentation, you know, continued and facilitated other conversations about Pan-Africanism. Okay. And so, you know, I had a few conversations about, you know, particularly Black nationalist revolutionary forms of Pan-Africanism. And as we have understood within the last few years, there has been a serious backlash and a significant amount of propaganda against Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism from many parts of the Black world. Yeah. And so some of the most famous elements of this are found in the ADOS stroke FBA movement and all its other offsprings. But even among Africans from the Caribbean, there is a significant, you know, element of us at the moment who are often licking out against Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, and seeking to create a quote unquote Caribbean identity, which is very disparaging and oppositional to an African identity. Yeah. Which is, you know, the dominant population of the Caribbean. So as a result of some of the conversations, and one of the main phrases within the conversations was that Pan-Africanism is outdated. Yeah. Nobody ever seemed to substantiate this point. You know what I'm saying? Nobody ever seemed to really, you know, detail exactly how and why it's outdated. Yeah. Except to try and say, well, basically the movement is not very strong at the moment. And you know, to whatever extent, depending on how you measure that, that will probably be a justifiable argument that the Black Nationalist Pan-Africanist movement doesn't have a lot of strength at the moment, okay, and influence at the moment. Yeah, that may well be true. That being true, however, doesn't necessarily, in my humble opinion, make it outdated. Yeah, and so I'm facilitating this for brothers and sisters who wanted me to speak on this a little piece more, and just to engage with brothers and sisters around these things. Yeah, particularly because a lot of the platforms that these conversations happen on can be very hostile, and with all due respect, some brothers and sisters don't know how to have a conversation like mature people. Okay. And I tend to try not to engage in certain kinds in conversations that carry a certain spirit. I don't mind disagreement, but yeah, when it becomes an immature slanging match, whereby the purpose becomes more about point scoring and actually engage in significant discussion, I kind of tend to check out. Yeah. And so as a result, Brother Seko, I see you. I'm going to bring you through shortly. And by the way, family, this is an open conversation. I will be presenting some stuff, but I don't plan to be here too long. We're going to be here for about an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most. Okay. And so yeah. So the substantiations are often extremely weak. Yeah. And let me say this from now. Respect to Brother Garfield for inviting me on the panel. Sorry, for on the channel, sorry. And I had was in the process of distancing myself from some of these channels, particularly because of what I consider to be an extremely unprincipled attack against a brother who's actually joined us just now, Brother Seku. Yeah, and I had distanced myself from these a lot of these conversations, or was doing so. But then what happened was, at one point, I challenged anybody who has the certain opinions to a debate, yeah, on a post that Brother Garfield put out about the supposed idea that Pan-Africanism is outdated. And so instead of accepting the debate, he invited me to do a presentation. And so I decided to accept the invitation to do the presentation. Yesterday, yeah, so I delivered a presentation. It was pre-recorded. It was then presented or streamed on Ujima Day. Sorry, Kuumba Day, Friday, just gone, and there was an after show just after that, in which I took part, and then there was another discussion last night, yeah, in which I took part. Now I've been on Brother Garfield's channel a couple times. The 2 times previous, yeah, to this weekend, I had been removed from the panel. All right, by well, on the first edition, I know that it was Brother Rabon that removed me from the panel. On the second time, I suspect it was Brother Rabon that removed me from the panel. And this time, yet last night, I was over talked to the point where I couldn't actually make the point that I was trying to make. And this is not the first time that has taken place. And it was just very disrespectful. And Brother Garfield, as the host of the show, I asked him to please manage the panel so that all brothers and sisters on it can be respected dutifully. And he decided that he wasn't going to do that. Okay. He has since removed last night's show from being viewed. Yeah. So you can't go back and watch last night's show. Okay. But I did message him after the show and tell him that I would not be returning to his platform until he is able to manage the people that frequent the platform in a manner that demands respect for everybody on the platform. There are certain people on the platform that are allowed to get away with anything, yeah, and without challenge. And because obviously, and we all do, I'm not judging Brother Garfield for having his biases, but he has declared that he believes Pan-Africanism is outdated, and he has his uncomfortabilities with people and who proclaim Pan-Africanism and the Pan-African idea, especially in its revolutionary incarnations. He's entitled to that, yeah. And I'm not asking for him to join the thing necessarily, although it would be good, but you know that's not what I'm asking for. Quite simply, if we're having a conversation, a brother shouldn't be able to just interrupt me and decide that he's not going to allow me to speak. And yesterday was basically the final straw for me. And so I'm not putting a ban on it forever and ever. I'm in Ra, but I'm just letting brothers and sisters know because some people wanted me to have a conversation on my channel and engaging further. And I'm just saying, I've told Brother Garfield, now go back there until it guaranteed respect is going to be shown, yeah. And it seems that there are 2 brothers in particular, yeah, who are allowed to go there and just take over conversations and decide that they are going to disrespect people. And I just don't feel like I need to open myself to that kind of disrespect or engage in that kind of a conversation. Okay, so once again, I'm giving thanks for the opportunity to present. I don't have anything personal against Brother Garfield or even Raborn and Brother Ark, despite some of the disrespectful ways in which they choose to relate to each other, to brothers and sisters who they disagree with, especially on matters such as these. However, yeah, like I said, I told Brother Garfield, you are at liberty to run your platform in any way that you choose to see fit, as I am to choose whether I'm going to engage in the manner that you choose to run the platform. And I've decided to just take myself, yeah, as we say in Jamaica, take myself from that kind of vibration. This, yeah. And so you can click the link, family, especially those who have heard the conversations thus far. There was another brother who many of us will know, Brother Isa. I don't think he's gonna come true, because yeah, he tends not to come true on my own platform. However, I have personally invited him because I didn't get to engage with him on Brother Garfield channel, although he was there. He asked me one question, he went away, he came back, and I was leaving by the time he comes back. Yeah. So big up everybody. I'm gonna bring through Brother Sekou now. Welcome, Brother Sekou. I see free there. And anybody can click the link here. Now I am gonna present a few things.
Greetings.
Okay? Greetings. I am going to present a few things, but because I need people to understand that this is not just a debate about history, but current politics, yeah, current geopolitics in the world. And so ideology has certain principles and values. And so when people say Pan-Africanism is outdated, they tend not to engage an exploration of the principles, yes, within different Pan-African or Black nationalist Pan-Africanist ideologies that they consider to be outdated. And so I want to explore a few of those things today, and I've got a few slides through which to do so. But before that, let me just greet Brother Sekou.
Yes, peace and blessing, Brother Shaka. I'm listening very keenly, and I really appreciate, the presentation. I was there that night. I followed through everything, but I wrote in the chat room, I don't know if you read it. I said, I'm sorry, I can't join the panel, but I would just listen, because I also decided to ban myself from never attending a Garfield platform.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that. I made that commitment. That's why I was tempted that day to come on, because of the disrespect they were doing. But I said, no, I committed to this, and I have to stick to my word. Because I was on that platform twice, and you see Ankh and Ankh, and then Rabon. These are brothers, I will not mince my word. They are very, very indisciplined for their age. And Garfield is very, very biased, and so he allowed them to override you, and they don't allow you to make your point. If the essence of having a dialogue is for us to have understanding of each other's viewpoint, then it's okay. Yeah. But if it is then to show how fast we can talk, how rude we are, how gangster we are, then there is no point. I should just go on the street then and put an earring in my nose and then start misbehaving.
Yes, my brother.
You see? But if I come on the platform for us to exchange ideas and learn from each other, then there should be the opportunity for an environment that is disciplined enough to allow each of us to make our point. So when I saw that on Garfield platform, I'm saying, Garfield, you're a knowledgeable brother and everything, but I would never come on your platform. Sarnetta platform, I still go there. Why? Because when you have a show on Sarnetta platform, he gave you the authority to allow anybody to come on, and you remove anybody you don't want. So if Rabon come on and start insulting me, Sarnetta can say, no, it's his day. He's making a presentation. I'm going to put you in the backstage. So he gave you the opportunity for you to explain yourself. So for that reason, I'm still on Sarnetta. But on Garfield, we don't have such opportunity. So that's why I would never go there. And I thank you for doing the presentation. Those brothers are doing a lot of misinformation, and I'm here tonight. I will be with you. I want to also make some clarification, because they are pushing a universalism agenda. They are back to what our scholars fought against, the Eurocentrism. And this is what they are trying to normalize it as if it's African center. They are trying to normalize Eurocentrism in a very clever way. So we want to see it. And then, they are trying to normalize Eurocentrism. When you don't see it, you say, oh, they are conscious. They use the word conscious community. What does that even mean?
What does it mean? Okay. Yeah, exactly.
What does it even mean? Conscious of what?
That's right, brother. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Go ahead.
So when somebody say we are part of the conscious community, what are you saying? Ang say his the reason he's on the platform is to push scientific literacy. That's what will liberate Black people.
Yeah.
You can tell the man has knowledge, but he's not really deep. What are you talking about? Scientific literacy is what was. Are there not scientific people in Black communities? Are Black people not scientific enough? We have a lot of scientists.
That's right. When you speak about the very skillful ways, yeah, it's putting up scientific literacy as though science exists outside of geopolitics. Yeah.
Yes.
Outside of political economies. Yeah. And so I'm a child of Amos Wilson. You can't bring that to me. Yeah. Amos Wilson said we must study the politics of science. We must study the economics of science. Yeah. And so it's as though when you listen to the argument carefully, the capacity to engage productively and eruditely in scientific exploration requires your allegiance to Western geopolitical institutions, nation states, and political agendas. That is the essential point that they don't want to actually deal with. So one of the questions that, for example, he asked me, and I'm not sure if you heard this in the after conversation, is whether an African-centered school will have Charles Darwin on the wall. Yeah. Now, why does the African Center School need to have Charles Darwin on the wall in order for it to be viable? But what we're doing is normalizing the worship of European iconography among African people, and as though in order to appreciate evolution, yes, and the idea of evolution, we must elevate this white man and make him our prophet. Yeah, I am not a Darwinite. I am a Garveyite. Yeah, and Charles Darwin, whatever he got correct about human evolution, can't replace Marcus Garvey and Winnie Mandela and Malcolm X and Queen Mother Nzinga and Yaa Santewa. Yeah, for I and I, it can't go on. It can't go so. Yeah, just like Charles Darwin doesn't replace George Washington and Abraham Lincoln for the people them that believe in America. Yeah, and Americanism. Yeah, it's not got that. Do you know what I'm saying? So, brother Sekou, we're gonna come back to you. Yeah, but I do want to greet brother IC3. I'm gonna get into a couple of things and then we're gonna have a conversation. Once again, anybody can join. I'll be here for about an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most. And then we will just let's have a free-flowing conversation. And brothers and sisters who heard the conversation, feel free to click that link. The link is in the chat, whether you're watching whatever platform you're watching on, and it's pinned to the top if you're watching on the YouTube. Greetings, brother IC3.
Greetings.
How are you?
Yeah, in good spirits. I didn't see the stream that you were both talking about. I'm just hearing it now. But the topic is interesting, and I'm aware of that attitude and those going ons. Yeah, so I'm up to date in that way.
No, I understood. Yeah. So right. So when it comes to this conversation, I want to clarify a few things. Yeah, and what I'm clarifying here is principles, okay, and goals. Yeah, strategies evolve and shift based upon the context in which you are pursuing a particular goal. But the idea is that if Pan-Africanism is outdated, if Black nationalist Pan-Africanism outdated, then by implication, what we are saying is the goals that are associated with it are outdated. Yeah. The only solution within any particular framework of political economy is organization and institution building. Okay, the type of organizations and the type of institutions that you build are dependent upon the specific goals that you are in pursuit of. Yeah. And so if we don't clarify the goals, then we will fail, yes, to understand the necessary institutions that need to be built.
100%.
Right. And I hope ones and ones appreciate what is being said right there. Yeah. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, Black nationalist Pan-Africanism, and whether it's outdated or not, there are a few things that we need to explore. Okay. So in the presentation, I looked at the fact that people like Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, people like Papa Patrice Lumumba, engaged in a distinction between the concept of independence, which, according to Nkrumah, for the most part, became sham independence on the African continent, and we can say that was also the case for the Caribbean. Okay, and they put independence on the one hand and liberation on the other hand. Yeah, and so the idea was that independence is a step towards complete and total liberation. And so the concept then, or the question then becomes, what is liberation? Yeah, what is liberation? Okay, so we in the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement define liberation as such. And by the way, I did mention my organizations when I started the presentation. I did so for a reason. I'm a member of the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement first and foremost. I'm also a member of the UNIA ACL RC 2020, which is the organization founded by, or the government founded by, the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. And in that spirit as well, I'm also a member of the Black Star Action Network International, Basani. Another day, we will go into the works of these different organizations and institutions and what we are doing. Okay, but let's define liberation. By liberation, we mean the acquisition of the power to be masters of our own destiny. This means to have control over every aspect of our lives, with the capacity to define, defend, and develop ourselves, thus determining our own destiny. Okay, I'm gonna put out a few things. Brothers and sisters, feel free to click the link again if you have questions or statements that you want to make. I'm willing to hear them. All right, so feel free to do that. And so bear this in mind, yeah, liberation to be the acquisition of power. So a key aspect within this liberation agenda is power acquisition. Okay, power acquisition, which means that we will have the capacity to define, defend, and develop ourselves. Yes, thus determining our own destiny. This is a very broad concept. The specificity comes again in what we want to employ the power to do, against what and for what. Yeah, and so we have to clarify this because there are many distractions from this idea of total liberation. And so in the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement, we identify the euphemisms, yeah, which are independence, democracy, equality, integration, assimilation, reform, anti-apartheid, anti-colonialism, anti-slavery, abolition, civil rights, human rights, equal opportunities, justice, positive discrimination, humanism, humanitarianism, universalism, racial harmony, multiracialism, multiculturalism, cultural diversity. That should say, sorry, progress, socialism, liberalism, etc. Yeah, and we say, as we see here, these are weak terms. Yeah, euphemisms aim to trivialize, neutralize, and pacify, and divert us from our fight for total liberation. Yeah. Now, so what we mean by this is that when we engage in an anti-slavery, anti-colonial, anti-neocolonial fight, we were fighting for the right, ultimately, yes, in our more revolutionary radical movements that were named with titles such as Black Nationalist and Pan-Africanist, for the right to be masters of our own destiny, power acquisition. And within the system of oppression, they have various different ideals of quote unquote progress that are designed to make us a little bit more comfortable, yeah, and feel like we're progressing within the system. We may well be to some degree, but if we get caught at that stage, we will miss and often negate the goal of complete liberation. And we're going to look at what that means in more specificity in a second. Yeah, and so independence is a good thing. Yeah, anybody who's colonized should be independent from those who is colonizing them. But again, it's a stage in the process, not an end in and of itself. Democracy, depending on how you look on democracy, it may be a good thing, but it's also in the geopolitical world a weapon of European imperialists. Yeah, so when we're looking at rule of the people, that might be a good thing, quote unquote. All right, but if we look at democracy as defined in the geopolitical West and how it is used to continue neocolonialism, then we might also reject democracy. So we have to be careful with that one. Equality is all good. Nobody wants to be treated unequally, so that's good stuff. Yeah. Integration and assimilation is now again one of the key aspects that is used to divert us from total liberation. The idea being that as long as the system embraces us, as long as the colonizer, yes, stops discriminating against us within the colonial system, then we are prepared, to negate a lot of our better held goals for the sake of, getting along, yeah, within the colonial system and within the colonial structure. Okay, and so one of the key dichotomies that we have here is the extent to which we separate or the extent to which we assimilate. And I suggest that that is the key differential or dynamic in this conversation right here. Yeah, I'm not going to go through this whole list, yeah, but let's human rights is all good, equal rights, equal opportunities, some of this is good stuff, but does it equal total liberation? That is the point. That is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Yeah, and whether we are prepared to pursue total liberation, or whether we're satisfied with just being integrated and assimilated into the systems and institutions of our colonizers. And so we go further to identify three of the main buzz terms that are used today in the world as far as the geopolitical arena is concerned. One is democracy, which I've already explained. The other is development and globalization. So there was one time where Africans, in revolutionary movements, were discussing liberation. Now we discuss development and globalization. And again, these are terms that are defined in the geopolitical West based upon the power of the geopolitical West. And because they define what it is, they also define how it is implemented. And it will always be implemented in their own interest. And history has proven for the last 500 years that freedom interest is diametrically opposed to the interests of African people who want complete liberation. Yeah. And so I hope ones are following me thus far. I'm not trying to be long. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this was codified within the ideology of universal African nationalism or African fundamentalism as espoused by the prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And the primary principles were race first, self-reliance, or R, race first, self-reliance, African spiritual orthodoxy, and nationhood. And we want to focus on nationhood because nationhood is in many ways the ultimate goal, okay? Because nation is the ultimate form of social, political, and economic organization. Yeah. The world geopolitics is governed through nations. Okay. And so when we're talking about complete, total liberation, the concept of nationhood becomes very important. I've got another presentation on this channel called African Power, where I delve into this concept a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more, because we have to look at the definitions of these terminologies and what they truly mean. Okay, and so we're going to do that in a bit today. All right, just a bit today. Yeah, so let's define some terms. What is a nation? A nation, as my father taught me, is a people organized as a sovereign entity. A sovereign entity is empowered by its own agency. Okay, a sovereign entity that is empowered by its own agency. Now, this is very important, yeah, because you cannot be sovereign within the nation of somebody else.
That's right.
Under the jurisdiction of somebody else, you can't be sovereign. Okay, right? So the question is sovereignty good for African people to pursue? Yeah, or is being subservient to the sovereign state of other people who are, in fact, in relation to African people, colonizers, is that sufficient for us? Yeah, is that a sufficient goal for us to pursue? Okay, that is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Yeah, and sorry, I've got to do something quickly here. Give me a second. All right, because I've missed I've just realized that I've missed out a particular slide that I need. I was going to retrieve it quickly and come back. Yeah, so give me a second. All right. Just need to retrieve them slide, yeah? And we're going to get back into the thing. Okay. All right. So from this slide, are we back? Yep, we're back. Okay, so sovereign, yeah, possessing supreme or ultimate power, acting or done independently without outside influence. Yeah, that doesn't mean that we don't have any outside relationships. In Walter Rodney's book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, independence doesn't necessarily mean isolation. Okay, from the rest of the world, but it means that no power dominates our own agency. Yes, or suppresses our own agency. An agency is action or intervention producing a particular effect, a thing or a person that acts to produce a particular result. Yeah, and we're just going to move on because we're all intelligent people, so we should understand what that means. Right, so this is explained in the words of Markham Messiah Garvey: no race is free, and whether you agree with this or not, these are the goals that have historically defined the Black Nationalist Pan-Africanist movement. Okay, no race is free until it has a strong nation of its own system of government, its own order of society. Never give up this idea. Never be satisfied to live under the governments of other people, because you will always be at their mercy. Visualize for yourself and your children and generations unborn your own kings, emperors, presidents, your own government officials and administrators who look like you. Yeah. He says, we are determined to solve our own problems by redeeming our motherland, Africa, from the hands of alien exploiters and founding a government, a nation of our own, strong enough to lend protection to the members of our race scattered all over the world and to compel the respect of the nations and races of the earth. Yeah, so the goal here should be clear. Now, my question then is, if Pan-Africanism is outdated, if Black nationalist Pan-Africanism is outdated, are we saying that the goal of nationhood defined by the agency of African people is an outdated proposition? Is that what we are saying? And if that's what we are saying, how do we substantiate that claim? Yeah, that's the question I'm asking. So nationalism, when you want a nation, as Omar Malcolm X was saying at the beginning, it's called nationalism. Nationalism we define as African people building and maintaining autonomous nations and communities with institutions designed to defend, to promote, preserve, and protect African lives by any means necessary. Nationalism is founded upon one fundamental principle and 7 essential principles. The fundamental principle from a Black national Pan-Africanist point of view is race first, which means race awareness and cultural emancipation first, putting the survival and prosperity of our people and culture before all other considerations. Culture just being our way of life. Yes, before all other considerations, this being the only logical and viable response to the worldwide racial oppression and genocide facing us as a people. So is it that the idea that African people should put our racial awareness and our cultural emancipation first an outdated goal? Yeah? Is this an outdated principle? And if it is outdated, why and how do you substantiate the idea that it is outdated? This is the question I'm asking, yeah? Then we have 7 essential principles, yeah, of nationalism, okay, which are a proud heritage, self-governance, self-reliance, separatism, self-defense, land acquisition, and repatriation, yeah? Now, I'm not going to read all of these now, okay? But maybe as the conversation goes on, it may require us to read some of these principles and their definitions, yeah? But which one of these in the present day would you consider to be outdated? Is it outdated that Africans should be proud of our heritage? Yeah. Is that an outdated ideal? How would you substantiate that? Is African self-governance an outdated ideal, an outdated principle, an outdated goal? Yeah. And if it is, again, how do you substantiate that? Is it outdated for Africans to pursue and build institutions through which we can be self-reliant rather than relying upon the institutions of Britain and America and France? Yeah, is that outdated? Or sorry, and if it is outdated, How do you establish that? Is it outdated that African people should separate ourselves, from the neo-colonial institutions that currently govern global geopolitics? Yeah. Is that an outdated goal? How do you substantiate that? Is it outdated that Africans should defend ourselves against the American military and the French military and the British military and NATO and Africa, in as much as they infringe on the sovereignty and the freedom and the liberation of African people, in as much as they infringe on the human rights of African people, as we exist in America or France or Belgium or Great Britain or wherever we are on the planet? Should we defend ourselves against the institutions of state that are attacking us? And is it outdated, the idea that we should defend ourselves, outdated? Yeah. Land acquisition. Should African people pursue land? Yeah, land is the basis of independence. If you don't have any land, you don't have any independence. Yeah, as Baba Mutabaruka is often fond of saying. Yeah, so is land acquisition by African people in the interest of African people an outdated principle? Please tell me why. And is repatriation, the idea that we should sankofa, return, to our Africanness, and our African land, in mind, body, and spirit, is that an outdated principle or an outdated goal? Okay, and so then Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and reunification of Africa and all African people, and the establishment of one continental and global African nationalist government. And Ma'atian, and let's say Ma'at or Ubuntu, and we can see what Ma'at means there: truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, rights, reciprocity, order, which is a social order that governed in ancient Kemet world order. Yeah, is it outdated that we should pursue the goal of liberation and reunification of Africa and African people? Is the principle, the governing principles of Pan-Africanism, as defined by the Al-Qaeda and Revivalist movement, Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, is that outdated? Why? Should we not look to Africa? When we say look to Africa, we're not just talking about the landmass, but the concept of Africa and African people as a people. Yes. Should we not look to ourselves? Yeah. Or is it sufficient to look to America and look to Britain and look to France and look to Belgium and look to the geopolitical West? Or should we look to ourselves and develop from ourselves? Yeah. What we want to see in the world. I remember Brother Sekou asking the question on the chat. The Africa that we see today, as far as the continent is concerned, is the Africa of European imagination. What is the Africa of African imagination? Yeah. Should we develop the Africa of Africa imagination and pursue bringing that imagination into a reality, or is that outdated? Please tell me how it's outdated. I need to know. Okay, I need to know how and why it's outdated. All right. And then we've got one God, or one Jah, one aim, one destiny. All African peoples are one in blood, spirit, and must be united continentally and globally towards one spiritual, cultural, political goal. Yeah. And so is that an outdated idea? I need to know how and why. All right. And so we also have this defined in the concept of world African sovereignty. Mama Marimba Ani teaches us that without a cultural and historical connection, we are not a people. It is the basis of our sovereignty, our self-governance, our self-reliance, our self-determination, our economic independence, our self-defense. Are any of these things outdated ideals in relation to African people? Or is the governance of the geopolitical West sufficient for us? Should we continue to be governed by the geopolitical neo-colonial West? Should we continue to rely on the geopolitical neo-colonial West? Should we continue to be determined by them? Should our economics not be independent of, but beholden to, the geopolitical neo-colonial West? And should we submit to the military might of the geopolitical or neo-colonial West? These are the questions that we have to ask. And I'm going to just finish here for now as far as this rundown is concerned by just highlighting terminologies within African languages that have been used to define the principles that I've outlined already. The most famous of which is Uhuru, which is in the Kikuyu language, but is also in many other African languages. But I put Kikuyu here because it was the Mau Mau, the so-called Mau Mau, more properly referred to as the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, who popularized the terminology Uhuru. And they are mostly made up of the Kikuyu brothers and sisters in Kenya. Okay, and Uhuru simply means freedom, and that was the cry of the liberation, the military liberation fight in Kenya. Then there's Chimurenga, which means liberation or revolutionary war, and that is in Shona, the Shona language. The Ndebele equivalent is Mvukela, yeah, liberation fight or war. And then more recently, with the inspiration of our brother Obadele Kambon, we used Abibi Tumi and Abibi Fahodie in the Twi language, which means Black African power or Black African liberation, respectively. Okay, so we're going to pause there, and that's my humble submission for now. Yeah. And I hope ones and ones appreciate what I was doing there. So brothers and sisters, feel free to click that link, yeah, and come through if you would like to be on the panel. You can ask questions in the chat also. I'm going to check out the chat, by the way. And so big up to Julanda Zachary. Thank you very much for joining me, my sister. I hope you're still here. I did pre your presence in the chat the other day, and so appreciate your comment. Much appreciated, my sister. Big up to Kodja the African. Big up to Melanated Goddess, God of Jacob. Tanky, Coffee Campbell. By the way, I've got Coffee Campbell coming on the 15th of March. Yeah, if you know Coffee Campbell, you will know that he's our resident neoliberal, and so he's gonna tell us why liberalism is the forgotten path towards Black liberation. Okay, and so we're going to interrogate that particular idea on the 15th of March. So we're going to hear from the brother, and then the floor will be open to ask questions as we always do. So feel free to join us on the 15th of March where that is concerned. All right. My brother's on the panel so far. By the way, the link is pinned to the top of the chat, or it's in the chat wherever you are. I'll post it one more time just in case anybody missed it. Anybody want to have anything to say? And it doesn't have to be in relation to what I've shared. It could be anything. If you heard the conversation, you want to share anything, expand upon anything, feel free to do so now.
You can go ahead. I'll speak afterwards if you like.
Okay. Thank you, Shaka. I mean, you did such a powerful work. You just summarized an entire PhD thesis, I would say. It's a PhD thesis that you just summarized in a few minutes. That's incredible. I learned a lot, and a brother just wrote a book. You can see on my Facebook. I use it as my Facebook profile.
I'm gonna talk to you about that on another day. Just anyway, we'll talk.
Right. He has his own view of Pan-Africanism, but we have a lot in common. And the title of his book is The Philosophy of Pan-Africanity. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I went on, and then the French is still in French, and he said the English version will be available in a few months.
I spoke to him about that a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So
okay, so he did an interview. Very interestingly, everything you're saying here is like coming directly from his mouth in the interview. Similar thing he was saying. Somebody asked him, what is Pan-Africanism today? Why should we even talk about it? So he said, look, first of all, we need to understand Pan-Africanism is an ideology of liberation. Yes. You have to get that basic thing first of all. An ideology of liberation. It seeks to liberate a people. Yes. Okay? Of liberation from what? Colonialism, oppression, cultural oppression, a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And we know this because who are the oppressed people? We know ourselves, we know our history.
Yes.
We know who the people who are oppressed culturally around the world. Black people. I see Rabon debating about Black people being free in America. It's like he forgot his mind in the toilet. He don't know what he's talking about.
His specific words were, "We are not oppressed in America." Yeah. So the only oppression that Black people are facing is outside of America, apparently.
What?
And the examples that he gave were exclusively on the African continent, right? So
Yeah.
so and Africans on the continent are not fighting their oppressors apparently. Yeah, there are no significant movements right on the continent. So go ahead.
A serious misconception, and that's why I love when you really articulated the goal. What is the goal? Okay, when you want to say something outdated, first of all, let's check what is, we define it, then we look at the goal. The goal of Pan-Africanism, power and sovereignty.
Yes.
Power
That's
and
right.
sovereignty.
Yes.
Do we have power?
Sovereignty.
That's where I have a problem with Reggie. He said, why did I say Black Americans don't have power? Do you know what power is?
Exactly. Not to interrupt you, but I wouldn't even get caught up with Brother Reggie. I think he's using that beating stick to get at you. I would slightly, because though, and we shouldn't have to do this because I think what you said was clear, but I would slightly revise your wording, yeah? And I humbly submit this. Instead of saying that we're powerless, yeah, we should say that we exist in a state of disempowerment, yeah? The reason why I say it is, for example, instead of saying that we're poor, I use language that we have been impoverished. Yeah. The reason why I say that is because it makes reference to a condition that was deliberately instituted. So by nature we are powerful. We have power within ourselves, but currently our power is not organized sufficiently to have influence. So therefore we are disempowered through a process. Yeah. And this is not to say that what you said was wrong. You are completely right. But because of the mischievous nature of some people, we have to we have to use, you know what I'm saying? So I humbly submit that to you, my brother. How does that sound?
I agree with the concept that we have been enslaved. I mean, we have been disempowered. Because even if I would use my language, for example, for the word poverty, is called bolo kolon, which means something has been taken out from my hand.
Right.
It's like I'm holding something and somebody.
Bolo kolon.
Bolo kolon.
Bolo kolon.
Empty-handed.
Bolo kolon.
Bolo kolon. So when you want to say somebody, you don't really say somebody is poor. In my language, you say that you have been dispossessed.
Right.
You've been dispossessed. That means
what language is that?
Is Mandinka.
Mandinka. Bolo kolon.
Yeah, Mandinka.
I like that.
So bolo kolon. It means I have been dispossessed and there was something in my hand and now it's taken away. I had it. It's mine. The potential is still there. My hand is still there. But it's like it was chopped out of my hand. So that concept, to get it. When we say we are poor, we don't mean that we are actually poor. We mean we've been impoverished systematically by a system that seeks to destroy us. So I don't know what people don't understand, that the need for sovereignty and power. Who is doubting white supremacy, the power that it has and the sovereignty it has, that it has imposed itself on the African people on the continent? And like you rightly said, I am submitting that the Africa we have today is not the imagination of the African.
Yes.
What does Nigeria mean? I'm asking the Nigerian. Stop a Nigerian and ask him, what does Nigeria mean? He doesn't even know.
Yeah.
Okay. Ivory Coast. Why would an African name his country Ivory Coast? The coast of ivory, where you come and steal the ivory. They will call it the Gold Coast. Has it not been the consciousness, the Pan-African consciousness of Kwame Nkrumah? He changed it to Ghana. It would have been a Gold Coast today.
Gold Coast. Yes.
So to even tell you the Pan-African consciousness, what it even does psychologically, it liberates you first of all.
Yes.
It puts you in a position to view the world from another lens. And we are talking about moving to, so when people say the Pan-Africanism are outdated, I'm looking for ideas that are outdated in the world to see what ideas are out. When idea is outdated, that means it does not even have the philosophy and all the necessary tools needed to shape in modernity, to use it to face modern challenges. But when we look at our modern challenges, Pan-Africanism remains a reality because we do not have sovereignty yet. We have still been impoverished. We have still been dispossessed. Our countries are now run on African philosophy and ideas. So the sovereignty, the military, economic sovereignty is not there. So how does Pan-Africanism become outdated?
My brother, you're from Liberia. Let me ask you a question. Yeah, you're from Liberia. Have you ever heard of an African military being employed in the defense, yeah, of its people? Has the government?
No.
You ever heard of? I'm coming from the Caribbean. I've never heard of it. All right, I've never heard of a government sending out the military to defend Jamaica, yeah, from attack, or to defend Antigua from attack. Yeah, or to defend Haiti from attack. I've never heard of it. Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
We do not have this. So one of the things I've discovered, that's why the last time I did a presentation on intellectual vigilance. The intellectual vigilance I'm talking about is this, because we have brothers who have become lukewarm. We know the battle is hard. We know soldiers go into the battlefront, they get traumatized, and they come back and say, can we negotiate peace? We have that in intellectual affairs as well. We have people who are looking at Pan-Africanism is a huge task. How can we accomplish this? It looks so scattered and people were killed and defeated. We can't win this. Let's try now to compromise to the global order. And that's what they are trying to do. One of the ways they do it, they come and tell you, race is a social construct. I hear that these days because they take that from the European textbooks now, because the European find out scientifically he can't defend racism anymore. So he come out with a term. The race is a social construct. Then Rabon and everybody use it. I said, okay, if I'm in a lab and I'm teaching biology, I tell my students race is a social construct. That makes sense. But when I'm in a political science class, race is a power and a political construct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's very simple.
I give you a little example. The American, I think it's a MOB American. I think they are Bureau of, I'm going to find it, of statistics, something have to do with the economy. They define what is white. They define what Baba Molefikete Asante put it up recently. Europeans have been shifting the definition of white every century to fit their political power.
Right.
At a certain time, the Irish and the Italians were not white. When it now benefits them economically, they added the Italian and the Irish. Now they see that the population is diminishing. Guess what they have done? They say the entire North Africa now is considered white. That's what they have done in the recent definition. So we sit down and say, oh no, we are Black Americans, or we are this. These people are expanding their definition of what their race is as long as it suits their economic and political agenda. So don't come sit before me and say race is a social construct. Is it American society that decided when to make Irish people white and when to make North African white? It's a political decision.
Exactly. But my brother, let me add to what you're just saying here. This slide here is in a presentation that I've got from a few years ago called well, it's about African-centered education. Okay. And I showed a couple of slides. Had the call to show a couple of slides from it in one of the discussions, but I speak to exactly what you're saying. Now, who's pictured here? The guy in the back, is a guy called Richard Dawkins. All right. He's a human biologist. He's most famous for having written the book, The God Delusion. Okay. But he's a human biologist and he's the public intellectual that has popularized the Human Genome Project. Okay. And a lot of the latest cutting edge science in terms of the development and evolution of human beings. Yeah. And so he got this t-shirt and has popularized this phrase, we are all African. Yeah. And he's on a show which is hosted by comedian Bill Maher, who is the host of a show called The Real Time. Okay. Who the other day basically was promoting the idea that we shouldn't, if we're going to cancel George Washington and the boys, the founding fathers of America, then we should cancel Jesus because he never spoke out against slavery. So he's basically defending the fact that people of color all around the world were engaged in slavery at the same time as the founding fathers of America. Yeah. Now, the other side to that is that all of those people of color, can anybody name me the rest of those people of color around the world who were engaged in slavery, who are also considered to be the founding fathers of the land and the free and the home of the brave? Yeah. Where are these other Africans who were engaged in slavery, heralded as mothers and fathers the bastion of civil rights and human rights and world peace. Yeah, I don't know that's the case. But the point is that, as you said, they use this scientific statement, but the scientific statement is a political statement. Yeah,
Yes.
right? Because there is a difference between saying humanity first evolved from Africa and human beings are all African, because African is an identity, and all identities are far more social than they are biological. Yeah, all identities, no matter what they are, even the identities that are based upon biological factors like man, woman. Yes, for example, it's far more social than it is biological. Yes, because through the identification, you're able to decide how to treat ones and ones within a society. Okay, and then you have this this tweet that he's got where he says, "We are all African apes. That's what my t-shirt means. Add political moral if you wish. Genetically, we are a V uniform species. Shun racism." So what happens is that the idea that we're all African is about fighting against racism, supposedly. So in order for white people to not be racist, yeah, they have to say, they have to deny, yeah, or negate the identity of Africa, or neutralize the power potential of the identity of Africans, yeah, while still promoting Western geopolitical hegemony in the world.
Absolutely.
The statement "we are not all African" doesn't negate the Western military industrial complex and AFRICOM and NATO. Has no impact upon them. It doesn't negate the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. It don't negate Lon Min in what the place name? South Africa, and the Bears in Sierra Leone and Congo. They're not going to go anywhere because we are all African. But what it also does, it gives everybody access and the right to return to Africa, access to the natural resources and the labor of Africa and African people, because humanity now is going to make a pilgrimage, yes, you know, an economic capitalistic pilgrimage to Africa to fund the digital revolution that is currently in place at the moment. But let me not interrupt you any longer. Go ahead.
Right. No, definitely. This is why this is very important. For me, the position that I hold is that Pan-Africanism should be redefined in the 21st century, or in 2023. We can keep redefining. And the reason that doesn't mean something is outdated, because every generation you find new strategies.
Yes.
You've learned you make some mistakes, and you try to now see in which way can we win. It's like you are fighting a war. Yes. You go certain time, you retreat and say, okay, let's retreat here and go this direction. That's how you go. That's how Pan-Africanism should be good. It's a living ideology that has to keep on expanding itself, improving itself, and make sure that it doesn't become a tradition that can change. It should be able to be flexible and into reality. That's why I say it should be redefined. Like I consider myself a DOPian. I tell people there's many schools in Pan-Africanism. I consider myself a DOPian because of two things. Because Dio said the cultural basis for a federated state.
Yes.
So for me, the cultural basis there, I look for cultural identity, historical factor, the psychological factor, and certain factors. It is those factors that make me to be closer to a Jamaican than a Tunisian. Even though the Tunisian is on the continent. It is that historical basis that make me to be, I see the Haitian as me and not the modern Egyptian.
Yes, sir.
So that's why I post myself to DOP, and DO speak of direct knowledge, la connaissance directe in French. Direct knowledge, which means the so-called European scholarly consensus must never be treated as fact. When in a Pan-African school, it must always be treated with suspicion and go through our own scrutiny and our lens and authenticate our own worldview. So there is no such a thing as a Darwin consensus or Darwin was now being what does the Pan-African say about evolution? That's the one question I'm going to ask. What is
let me ask this, Kitseku. Let me answer this, because when you say that now, because somebody's going to say, well, science is objective, right? It's objective, So in saying what you're saying, are you denying the facts, the facts as it relates to the evolution, the biological evolution of human beings? Are you saying that because Charles Darwin popularized these facts, yeah, or did the studies to popularize these facts, that we should rubbish these facts because Charles Darwin was a white man? Is that what you're saying, Sekou?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Okay.
not. I am saying that science is the idea that European presented as science is objective. It's not totally true. Science operates within the cultural paradigm.
Yes.
So I will give you an example, even on the history of evolution. When evolution first started, they came up with a lot of false theory. The first thing they said was that the African was still evolving. We are directly closer to the monkey, and the European is the one who has evolved. Until today, look at their pictures of evolution. The last one on the ladder is white.
Today,
You have to be careful. So you can now put your child in the school, go and learn evolution. The child is learning white supremacy in that evolution, because they now put the white man at the end of the evolution scale, and the black color start to fade towards the monkey. That is a trap.
That's right.
Yeah. To this day, it's true.
The evolution that we know is that anatomically modern man, the Homo sapiens evolved totally as a black man before he moved into Europe. So the accurate scale should have been white black man at the end of the ladder. Then other families split out of him.
Right.
They put the white man at the end of the ladder. That's a trap. The second one, there is what we call scientific racism.
Yes.
If you know the story of the Piltdown man, they falsified fossils and present it as fact. And they began to falsify information, and they said these were factual, that the real man evolved in Europe is the ancient man that evolved in Africa, but the Homo sapiens man evolved out of Europe. There are all these nuances within the evolution that we must be careful of. So now, does that mean I'm saying that no, because Darwin is white, therefore we throw it out? No, I'm saying we must have our perspective. Like for the Chinese, for example, the Chinese did not just take the evolution and say we are from Africa. Chinese geopolitically looked at it. They said we are looking at it. We feel we come from the Mongolian type and what have you, but what is came out of Africa, we will look at it. There's political reason, because they say, what is the political benefit of telling our people in China you came from Africa?
Right.
So they look at it from a political lens, and because that doesn't mean the studies were out of their lab and their schools. They were going through it, and they were coming out with a little bit of fact to see what type of human that evolved into them.
That is specific to them.
Darwin stopped. They have to take it from their perspective towards Darwin.
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm saying. Every knowledge, we must take it from our perspective and drive to a conclusion. Not take it from their conclusion and drive to our confusion.
Brother Sekou, I'm going to pause you there for a second, and I'm going to invite you back at some point, because you're a brother who has a lot to say. I have a whole lot of respect for you, and I want to just dedicate a show to you, at some point soon, okay? But there are a couple of other brothers coming through, so I want to bring them in. But whilst you're still here, when I bring you back in, I'd like for you to speak to Pan-Africanist work that you know that is going on specifically on the continent, specifically on the continent, the revolutionary Black nationalist Pan-Africanist work that you know of and maybe involved in on the continent, So there's stick up in for that for now, or we're going to come back to that point, So brothers and sisters, stay tuned for that. We're going to get, because I gave some examples on the show yesterday, and a man told me that I'm chatting foolishness, right? So we're going to hear some more from Brother Sekou in terms of what is actually taking place on the continent in terms of Black nationalist revolutionary Pan-Africanism. Brother Dex, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Brother Kale.
Big up Shaka, big up IC3, big up brother.
Big up, greetings.
Yeah, man.
We'll soon come to you. But Brother Dex, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you, my brother. Give thanks. Where are you tuning in from?
I'm in Los Angeles, California. In
All right, LA, California knows how to party. You know what I'm saying? welcome. Go ahead.
First thing I want to say is the Oma Wale presentation you gave was crazy. It made me look back at Malcolm and look back into the old AAU, and I was just like, man, how did he have a program with objectives and goals and we not pick it back up and continue with it. But then I thought again, I was like, man, actually all these other organizations, these legacy organizations, are just different aspects of the one program or the one organization that he was trying to build and to move us forward.
Yes, sir.
And that what Sekou said, he said something about white as the political term being redefined every now and then as history moves on. The black, no one group. Well, I guess you could say we do have a tool like that, which Black History Month kind of has a theme with it sometimes. I'm not sure what group puts the theme out, but there is no institution that can redefine what our goals and objectives are these days, especially in America. But we don't have many brothers like Sekou. We got a lot, but those are the brothers who get pushed to the back and pushed to the side because it's not entertaining and it's not exciting to it, and this dominant society is against their goals and objectives. So that is a big thing over here. And I want to know, how did this brother Sekou come to this conclusion, and how he seems well studied. I want to know if he's a part of an organization. I did some studying with the AAPRP, and that led me to Kwame Ture and learn about Kwame Nkrumah. That really took me through my studies to learn about Africa and Pan-Africanism and give me the political scope that I needed to actually maneuver out here and to see what's underneath everything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that. Brother Sekou, I hope you got that question. He's asking you, how did you come to this point? And if you're a member of an organization, because it relates to the question I asked you, I'm gonna pause it for there, so we'll come back to that question while he bringing Kale. But before we do that, let me just say shout out to our brothers and sisters from the All African People's Revolutionary Party. One of the key things, and Brother Kale will know, you're familiar with 105 Heathfield Road, Kale?
Most definitely, brother. Most definitely.
And so when you go 105 Heathfield Road in Birmingham, you're gonna see a big collage, and it's like a museum. One of the rooms is like a museum on the wall, and one of the things that features on there is Baba Kwame Toure's visit to the UK in 1983. That was a very pivotal time within the development of Pan-African organization in the UK. And all Pan-African organizations, whether they took on or adopted socialism as an ideal or not, paid homage to Baba Kwame Ture and learned a lot from him. And so as an Al-Kebla revivalist movement, at the time, we didn't exist, but the Pan-African Congress movement did. And so we come out of that Pan-African Congress movement school of Black nationalism. And so we had a lot of debates with our socialist brothers and sisters, but many of us studied with the AAPRP because they have a fantastic political education program that was developed and instituted by Baba Kwame Ture. And he says that we must always be engaged in the political education of our people because our enemies are always politicizing us. That's right. Constantly politicizing us. So I just want to send a special shout out to the All African People's Revolutionary Party, because if you are looking to get to know about Pan-African philosophy, theory, and practice, the AAPRP study program is an excellent place to start. Whether you do it independently because you can get their reading list, or you engage and they engage in online study circles at the moment. So you can do that at the moment. Again, have my debates and disagreements with the AAPRP, but I certainly agree with them more than I agree with the government of the United States of America, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, and France. Go ahead, Brother Kel.
No, it was just about the other night, brother, man. Like, we need to do more awareness and kind of lean towards the nationalism, because I'd like, as I said, I like what you were saying, man. The socialism, all due respect to those who entered it, but he kind of deflated all of us, So it was just that, like, kind of marketing Pan-African nationalism, basically, man. If we can do that, it will limit certain sabotorial tactics. Big up, man.
Bro, we will agree, that to a significant degree, because of the fact that, one, socialism required us to a significant degree to form an alliance, on a principle basis, an eternal alliance, because we don't mind forming temporary alliances, but we don't have any permanent alliances, but it required us to get into a permanent alliance with the white working class, which was a part of the Western geopolitical order, and just formed at a different function at a different level. It also, to a significant degree, for some brothers and some people, did this to vary in different degrees when you come to socialism, but because Russia was a dominant socialist force, a lot of people wrap themselves in Russianness.
That's right.
In order to be revolutionary, and so being revolutionary began to be defined by the extent to which you can adopt Russian philosophy.
That's right.
And again, not everybody did this. Some people were socialists within themselves, but they were prepared to do business or trade with America and Russia, Britain and Russia, or Britain and China, for example, when China was fronting a more explicitly communist or socialist agenda, but they weren't necessarily trying to adopt, the philosophy of or the political agenda of Russia or China. So there's all these variations and permutations that need to be outlined. However, what will be true to say is that whatever the case was, one of the things that took place was that the Western imperialists used all kinds of methods. They call it McCarthyism. They just throw the word communist at you. Whether you're a communist or not, and whatever kind of communist you are, but it's a weapon to justify Western military engagement or agenda and invasion. An activity within your nation. There are a lot of brothers and sisters who front this at the moment. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because one of the things that came out of that discussion was the idea that Pan-Africanism is somehow synonymous with socialism.
That's right. That's right.
And there are some Pan-Africanists who believe this, and there are some Pan-Africanists who challenge that idea.
Yeah.
Right. But whatever the case, they were saying it's outdated because of the association with socialism. Yeah. And so again, what we see in that argument is simply an unconsidered regurgitation of European or Western Cold War propaganda. However much our assessment of socialism should be based upon our historical experience and political agenda as African. We shouldn't be simply regurgitating British and American propaganda when they were in the Cold War with Russia. Yeah,
that's right.
And so again, you notice that brothers and sisters who pledge their allegiance to America tend to repeat statements that solidify and emphasize and symbolize the geopolitical agenda of America and the West.
Yes, they do. That's right. Yeah.
Because if socialism is outdated, why isn't capitalism outdated when capitalism is older than socialism as a geopolitical as a political economy? Yeah, Adam Smith come before Marx.
That's what. Yeah.
In that respect, if you follow me, right? So yeah, there's all them thing there. IC3. Anything you wanna throw in?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'd like to challenge.
Sorry, IC3. Let me repeat. The link is in the chat. I'll share it again. The link is in the chat. So for brothers and sisters who want to join, if you want to ask a question, please tag me. But there's a lot of conversation that goes on in the chat, and so I can't follow all of it. And quite frankly, I don't want to, because some of it's is just distracting. That's what happens in the chat all week. So if you want to actually ask a question, please tag Shakara Speaks, and we'll get your question or comment on. Go ahead, IC3. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yes, so I agree with you. Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism is not outdated.
Yes.
The goal is not outdated.
Yes.
But I would like to challenge the traditional strategies in order to achieve that goal.
Which is so. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that all of you are traditional and I'm going to try and come with something different. So maybe the the back and forth between us, we
Go
can
ahead,
we get something. All right. So I'm going to go up against you guys. Okay. So it's like Labour Party versus Conservatives. Okay. So watch this.
I don't like that analogy, but
Yeah, but you know, just okay. Two parties going on here. Okay, with the common goal of the nation. Yeah. So the parties are subdivisions of the nation, and both parties work to push the nation. Right. Okay.
Go ahead.
The opposition.
Yes.
So I'm saying that Africa and African values and culture are constantly being eroded. Yeah, and nobody has been able to stop the long march of white supremacy, and people are thinking about solutions or whinging. It's mostly whinging. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to share with you how I view the whole battlefield.
Yes.
And so which may be different from how you see it.
Yes.
I see white supremacy as a two-pronged system. And because it's two-pronged, it confuses the opposition.
Right.
And that's why it's been so successful over more than 500 years. It's manifested in the white supremacist global financial ecosystem.
Yes.
It's finance.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people talk about politics. Yeah. But how does politics relate to the world of finance? You see? So these two are dancing. So when you're going after the politicians, then you get hit in the back of the head and you don't know what's going on here. Then you turn and you think, oh, it's the bankers. And then you turn again and you get hit. So we're constantly in a state of confusion because the bankers are there and they're wielding their power quietly in the background. So it seems very simple. You say, okay, we have to fight the state. We can see the people, who's in position, what are their names. It's nice and clear. But how do you fight a bank?
Okay.
How do you fight finance? So that's why I'd like to
first of all, I take the statement from the honorable gentleman very well. I'm being facetious, family. That's British parliamentary talk.
Okay.
But
let's play it.
Indeed. But yeah, no. First and foremost, the first thing I need to identify is the fact that you will hear me generally speak in terms of political economy. Yes. Okay. So when we talk about Western imperialism, it is a political economy. Okay. There are political agendas that are facilitated through economic institutions. Yes. And political institutions. Yeah. So as you mentioned, the government, political institution, the military is a political institution, but there is no military that is not also an economic institution, because militaries require resources. Once you begin to discuss resources, you are discussing economics. Yeah,
that's right.
You need to feed, clothe, and shelter, and arm your military. Okay,
that's right.
And so then you also have financial institutions. Yeah, but financial institutions are fundamentally economic, but they are also political. Yes, because for example, if we look at the IMF and the World Bank, these are financial institutions, but they were established by governments, yeah, in collaboration with each other. Yeah, so they were established after Mass European War II by the Allied powers, yeah, led by Britain and America in particular, America, and France in particular, and all those would come under their axis and sphere of influence. Yeah, so even the financial institutions are not void of governmental and political agenda. And when you look at the policies that are employed here, for example, structural adjustment program on the African continent or in the Caribbean, when you look at the policies that are employed by these institutions, they are designed to do the bidding and serve the agenda of the nation states from which they come and the corporations birthed in those nation states. So there is a relationship between, for example, JP Morgan and the Beers, the mining company, the diamond mining company, and JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the world today. Yeah. JP Morgan has been funding the mining operations in Congo for well over a century. Okay. So to answer your question about how we fight them is through, again, you can't get around organization and institution building. Yeah. So whatever stage of development that we are at, we have a responsibility. This is going to sound very vague, but it's very real. Yeah. We have to organize within every area of people activity in our own interest. Yeah. And so if, for example, there are we have an issue with mining and exploitative mining, then we have to organize among the people who are doing the mining, for example, the laborers, to at least strike. Yeah. And say, we're now mine. For example, yes, we have to organize political organizations to challenge the policies, the political and economic policies of the governments that are seemingly under our control. Yeah. We have to develop media institutions that are able to propagandize to our people in the same way that BBC, CNN, Fox, Disney, what's the other one? Universal, all of them propagandize to us.
Orlando Studios, all them. Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah.
So that the solution is always going to be institution building according to our own agenda. That is never outdated. I'm going to pause and open. Brother Sekou, you want to contribute to the answer to this question? Would you like to contribute to the answer to this question? You're on mute, bro.
Yeah, I was going to speak today. It was part of my last, but then he brought it up, so it's very, very interesting.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is it's a very huge question because the battle is like a web. We are in the middle of a web, and we are like asking what path we're going to hold. Yes. So it's very, very difficult. One of the things, everybody have different ideas, but one of the things I said a long time ago, and when I say it's very funny, people even know, I said Pan-African organized sabotage. We have to sabotage the system and then bring order into it later. We have to do it, have to be deliberate. We cannot wait democracy and election until a Pan-African leader emerges. It will never happen. Pan-African needs to be on the ground, sabotage the system in Africa. I mean, it's unfortunate I'm saying this out here on YouTube, but I'm not going to say in detail. But I'm saying the system must be sabotaged and arranged later. Let me give you one little example. I won't go further.
Go ahead, my brother.
There is a traditional group in Mali called the Donzo. If you know them, Donzo, D-O-N-Z-O. It existed since the beginning of Mali Empire. In fact, you are wearing something similar to the Donzo Club, Brother Shakara. They have a particular clothes that they wear. They are a military style of traditional hunters. So it's a secret society, the so-called secret society. So they used to be hunting, they study animal, plant, they do a lot of things. So they are still there today. A group of men, able-bodied men are always there. So recently, I was speaking to one of their leaders in Mali. I said, what I see the Russian Wagner group, a private military, is now in Mali trying to save Mali. Why not transform the Donzo into a Pan-African private military? Because we don't have much animals to hunt today in Africa. We want to kill this animal. So let's reform the Donzo. It's already a traditional institution of men, able-bodied men. recruit Pan-African from all over the world, register it and say, we are a private Pan-African army just to protect civilians and our forest. We just want to protect our animals and our waters. Any African country required us to protect the villages because the Islamic terrorists are coming from the north. The African military is too formidable. We are just traditional military group protecting the plant, protecting the water. And before you know, a young black African from around the world begin to recruit into this private military. And I will not say more, we sabotage the system and replant our Pan-African leader. That's just one way. We need to go, like the brother said, into the media, into the NGOs. But I'm telling you, there is a need to pick up this. We are not creating nothing new. There's traditional institutions are there. We just need to modernize them and use them to our advantage. And when I told the man, he was like, brilliant idea, I never thought of it. I said, so there's no need going around dancing, playing guitar and doing these shows and killing antelope. There was somebody to the antelope we need to kill is white supremacy.
Yes.
The antelope we need to kill is the from the north.
Yes, sir. That's a beautiful statement, my brother. Go ahead. No, you know. I'm minded by the fact that we've been so colonized that our military institutions become entertainment for tourists.
That's right.
Become entertainment.
Yeah.
See this one guy making guitar in front of white guys and they're dancing and they drop the five.
Beautiful.
I said,
yeah. It's
the black struggle has become a commodity of notice. You know, as well, what I was saying, brothers, is that you know, in that book, The Destruction of the Black Civilization, William Chancellor mentions that the African version of democracy, we had different roles. So if some of us are trying to fight the system as it pertains to the government, right? And then organize the military, and then some of us try and sort out the code of conduct while all that is happening. That could be very effective, because I've noticed, like, when one of us are doing something, we kind of rely on that, and then we don't want to do nothing. So the fact that we're all active at the same time, different roles, I believe that will be very progressive.
And that's the point. Why are the things why? Sorry, I'm going to come back to you, Sekou. Yeah. Why are the things why solutions become very difficult to outlay sometimes? Is because we are talking about total liberation, which means there is a solution that applies to every single area of people activity. Our colonization is not monofaceted. It is multifaceted. So all of our solutions are going to be multifaceted. Nation building is a complex endeavor. So the solutions are going to be complex. And we should not be satisfied with McDonald's and 2-minute noodles. Solutions are explored and actioned in the context of organization. Yeah. So it's when you're working in an organization that is trying to do something that you're actually going to be battling over ideas and programs and bringing them into existence. As beautiful and as velvet as my voice is, and articulate as I am with the English language, nobody should expect to get the solution from this one program. It's impossible. The solution to all of the problems. You can get some ideas, but the actual solutions are in the organizational work that takes place when we come off of the platform. Yeah, that's why I said we can't talk the whole of the things them on the platform. Certain things have to talk behind closed doors. We actually engage the solutions. So I want to manage people's expectations immediately. Go ahead, brother Sekou. And then we're gonna bring Coffee, who's in the back chat.
So I am saying that there are institutions already. Because the Donzo institution, I gave an example. They cannot eliminate it, because the people will rise and say, this is our cultural institution that existed for thousands of years. You cannot eliminate the Donzo. Do you know, no matter how Islam has taken over Mali, they have not been able to remove the Donzo. And to join the Donzo, if you are Imam or you are whatever Christian, you have to denounce the religion to join the Donzo. So already existing. Yeah, you got to. I deny it.
Sekou, is it similar to Cheddar in Senegal? Are you familiar with the Cheddar? in Senegal.
Not familiar with
Not
the
Haile
sector.
Selassie. Okay, no, go ahead. Don't worry. We'll discuss that.
So you find them in all the country, in Cote d'Ivoire, they are all over. And this is a military reserve, and they are going around with this traditional gun. They say they are looking for an antelope to shoot. Then they go around and they dance. So I'm like, God damn it. What am I? Do the people think what I'm thinking? You know, so I began to see that these are things we can start doing. And I like what Kemi Seba is doing. He's sabotaging the system where I would not like to use the word propaganda, but by throwing out consciousness on the street.
Yes.
So they're telling the young African, that's your enemy. Those are the people making you poor. So that when a young black boy see a white man, a white French army vehicle coming, he's angry. That's the consciousness that Kemi Seba has been able to raise over. But that consciousness has not been organized into a political system. It has not been organized into an economic power. It's on the street there. It's looking for an agency to organize it.
Yes,
so this is people, the Pan-African struggle. People like, oh, no, what do we do with those of you over there? You want to rely? We here want no. We have to deliberately live. The Zionism, even if it lie, it succeeded. Okay,
that's right.
It succeeded. There was a political. And it was even more likely to succeed than Pan-Africanism.
Yeah, true.
If you look at it, it was more likely to succeed than Pan-Africanism. Why? Because there were Palestinians already in the land.
Them better at finance.
All over. Yeah.
True.
How do you
But Sekou, you know what? What was the fundamental foundation for their organization? It was the Jewish identity. Yeah,
the Jewish identity.
The Jewish identity.
Right.
That was their fundamental
But they always
organizational foundation. I'm coming to you, Brother Sekou. Sorry, Brother Coffee. I'm coming to you in a second. 1 second. Their foundational organizing feature and principle was the Jewish identity.
That's right.
Right.
That's
so
right.
Finish Sekou.
That's why when I started my submission here, I said I'm a Ethiopian. Yes. Because Dio talk about the cultural basis.
That's right.
For a federal state. Because the cultural basis has psychological factor and historical factor. That's why I appreciate the Afrocentric movement that people try to attack. What it tries to do is to create a consciousness within all Black people that we have a cultural unity within the difference we have. There is a cultural unity. This is why Kemet becomes very important. When people say, why you guys love Egypt, you know, Mali is there, the great empire in West Africa. No, we are trying to detribalize the consciousness of an average African so that we can unite around one classical culture.
That's
so
right.
We are do that even at a certain level, then we can consciously or unconsciously act in the interest of the African people.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only time, because let me tell you, many Jews were atheists, but their atheism did not put them out of their Jewish identity. Black people become angry and they want to bury everything black.
Yes, sir. I see. Free. I'm gonna come back to you 1 second because I do want to bring in Coffee, and I'm gonna come to a close soon. Yeah, like I said, I didn't want to be on for 2 hours. Yeah, so go ahead, Coffee.
Yeah, greetings.
Sorry, Coffee. 1 second. Before you go in, brothers and sisters, if you're familiar with me and this channel, you will know that I'm very much a student of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop as well. And so the books that Baba Sekou is referring to, one, Black Africa, the economic and cultural basis for a federated state. You will have heard me quote this exponentially, and maybe we'll do some of that a little bit later on. And the text in which he breaks down the psychological, the linguistic, and the historical factor is civilizational barbarism. Yeah, the chapter on culture. It's extremely important to study this. And Baba Sheikh Anta Diop is a scientist. Yeah, I'm just emphasizing that fact for the sake of the conversation. Go ahead, Coffee.
Yeah, listening to you and Sekou talk about the Pan-Africanism, and most of it revolve around Diop and Diop's economic ideas and development ideas and about culture. You can see why the brothers over by Garfield podcast dismissive of Pan-Africanism. Now, I agree that the way they went about doing it wasn't the best way. You know what I mean? And I don't think they really wanted to hear your position. I think they just they were just intent on dismissing it. But that don't mean that look, the reason why a lot of black people don't say Pan-Africanism as relevant is precisely because of the irrelevance of socialism, especially socialism in the Marxist sense, and how it was a complete failure in Africa during the Cold War. You can't really convince the new generation that resurrecting that will lead to material and spiritual progress, right? That's why socialists nowadays, if you ask them, all right, point me to a successful socialist country, they shy away from the traditional socialist countries like North Korea and Cuba. They will point to like Scandinavia and want to pass off Scandinavia as socialist because the track record of socialism has been a disaster. Now, you mentioned the Jews and Zionism, right? Again, cultural identity or a Jewish identity or a racial identity is important, but are necessary, but it's not sufficient for material or well-being of our people, because the Jews were always culturally conscious, right? But the only reason why they attain material wealth and hence influence in Europe, and because of the Jews who came out of the ghetto, right, and began to integrate, whether you want to call it strategically or not, they began to integrate into the Western culture through the so-called Enlightenment ideas, etc. And they began to offer the services to the so-called Gentiles. As Booker T. Washington said, no oppressed people who have something to offer to the world are oppressed for too long. And as time the Jews found something of value to trade with the Gentiles. If the Jews had stayed in the ghetto, they could have been culturally conscious all they want. They would still be poor. You understand? The Rothschilds, they were good at finance and arbitrage, etc. And then when emancipation in Europe came for them, they flooded the universities, etc., because they had a culture of learning, etc. You understand? So cultural identity in and of itself is good, but you need something else to push you out of that economic stagnation, right? And closing yourself off in a kind of voluntary ghetto is not the way to go about it. And that's why Africa today is still reeling from the failure of a lot of the socialist and statist policies that close Africa off from the rest of the world.
All right. So give thanks for that. A few points here. Yeah. First and foremost, the Diopian, if Diop is a turnoff for brothers and sisters to engage in Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, if adherence to the philosophies and ideas of Sheikh Anta Diop is a turnoff because Diop is somehow outdated, then the philosophy of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson.
No, not Diop. His Marxism, not his scholarship.
And Abraham. No, but his scholarship wasn't based around Marxism. His scholarship was based around.
No, I'm saying his scholarship is more relevant today, but the Marxism is not.
But let's say I agree that the Marxism may not be relevant. The Diopian scholarship is not based upon Marxism. The Diopian scholarship is based upon the cultural unity of Black Africa. Yes, and all of the
not really, no,
but it is.
It's a little bit more than that.
Sorry, there is no Diopian text whereby Marxism is the tool of analysis or the standard of assessment.
The book you held up
Sorry.
book
This
you
is what I'm
held up,
saying.
the programs.
Coffee. You spoke uninterrupted. Yeah.
All
So
right, okay,
we're not right. So allow me to finish. Okay.
He has
Right.
definitely
So-
never read the book. Have you read the book, brother?
Yes, me read the book, my youth. Me read
Yeah.
the book. Me
What-
know
What
me
is
know
the
him.
book? What
I
is
know
the book
say marry
about?
a white wife. So
Yeah.
I'm-
And these are things that we would disagree with Diop on. The point is that we in disagreeing with Diop, we don't have to mischaracterize him. Yeah, that's the
right.
point, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he was a
the
Marxist.
idea,
Come on.
So the idea that Diop formed an analysis and a theory based upon Marxism is just fundamentally false. It's not to say that he didn't have an appreciation for Marx. It's not even to say that he didn't think that. It's not even to say that he didn't think that Marx has some good ideas. But his fundamental foundation was not Marxism. Yeah, to entertain Marx and to engage Marx is not to be a Marxist. All right, so we don't have to engage in that. If you study Diop, his tools of analysis are all looking at African civilization and as he says, and I believe pre-colonial Black Africa, identifying the stabilizing factors within African culture for the purpose of employing them towards a nation building effort. Yeah, this is not coming from Marxism. Okay, so let's
central planning programs in Black Africa.
Central planning is
That
not
is
Marxism.
coming.
Central
Yes,
planning.
it is.
Central
Yes,
planning.
it
No,
is.
it's not. Central
Come, let's
planning.
have some order here.
Exactly.
Wasting
Yeah,
time.
let's
Again, we're
Yeah.
not going to take it through the weeds, but that's the idea that central
Yeah.
planning is Marxism is again Western propaganda. Yeah,
Yeah.
European geopolitical, like as though Britain don't central plan and America don't central plan. It's nonsense, right? So we're not going to engage in that kind of foolishness. The issue is with the brothers and sisters who use socialism as an excuse for not engaging Pan-Africanism. It's not socialism itself. The issue is their allegiance to to the West.
To the
Because they've pledged their allegiance to the West, they have made themselves enemies of whatever the West doesn't like. So Western capitalism doesn't like socialism, and so for whether you know what socialism it is or not, you must negate socialism, and it's easy to do so because the dominant propaganda within Western environments is communism bad, socialism bad, and anything that's socialist doesn't work. And so what happens? They skillfully don't, for example,
capitalism is also
excuse me, please, thank you. So what happens is, for example, they say that socialism didn't work in Africa. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the evidence that socialism doesn't because it didn't work in Africa.
Didn't work anywhere.
The overwhelming majority of states in independent Africa were never socialist. Yeah.
They were statists.
The overwhelming majority of states on the African continent were never socialist, and the majority of them were anti-socialist because they were allegiant to the West and West. I'm going to come to you second.
Anti-socialists
Can we have order in the house?
Yeah, brother. That's right.
Order in the house. Order.
Impose control. Yeah. Right. When it comes to I will allow you to speak, Coffee. You know I never cut you off. Yeah, even though I disagree with you always, but you know I never cut you off. All right, but so please respect the platform. Yeah. So yeah, that is the agenda here is a political one. And what was I saying? Right. So they say that it didn't work because of socialism. Then them say, well, like you just said, cutting yourself off from the world. But none of the governments that were actually socialist, yes, did that. All of the governments that were socialist, because they were also simultaneously part of the so-called non-aligned movement, they were prepared to relate to the West as well as the East, the capitalist bloc as well as the communist bloc. What happened was the capitalist bloc decided that any relationship with the communist bloc meant that you were an enemy of America, and therefore America and Britain and France had the right to invade you. Yes. And so on and so forth. So they don't discuss the fact that, for example, the CIA was intimately involved in the overthrow of the assassination for Kwame Nkrumah. That the CIA and the Belgians and the French were intimately involved in the assassination of Papa Patrice Lumumba. No, socialism just failed. Without interference, yeah. And Patrice Lumumba was not even a socialist or a communist, but he was accused of being so. All right. But socialism fell without the interference of Britain and America and France on its own back, it fell down. Yeah, this is oversimplistic reasoning that is born of Western propaganda that is that wants to hide its destructive hand in the politics in the
Can I answer
geopolitics
a question?
people. 1 second, you can after Brother Sekou responded.
Yeah, you know, this issue I always hear it always come up. Anybody who called Dio a Marxist or what have you, I would think that you have never read his book. Even if you read it, you have not thoroughly analyzed what he has said. Because first of all, Dio's position is, I said it here, la connaissance direct knowledge. For him, every information, every social political ideology or whatever the African has learned must be reinterpreted to the African reality. So there is no way Diop can tell you you should take textbook Marxism and implement it in Africa. In fact, even democracy, Diop said it has to be redefined in African context, because we have to have what he called the involvement consensus instead of this exclusion of minority versus majority. He brought up a lot of ideas. He wasn't never trying to say implement direct Marxism. And this idea that whatever the white ideologies are against, then we should just put it in the dustbin. We are not going for that at all. I don't think it makes any kind of sense. What I think we should be looking at in terms of building a state in Africa, there are so many alternatives we have. So many. We don't have to replicate Marxist. We don't have to replicate capitalism, because even the Europeans who are criticizing these ideas, they are implementing them today. I live in Canada. We have a universal health coverage. If you did it in the 90s, you would be a socialist country. Okay? They have a housing system here that the government pays for you to live in that house if you cannot afford. In fact, majority of the people here live in government housing. If you did that 20 years ago, you are a socialist. They call themselves now social democrats. Look, if you are not careful, the white people, they will put you in the house and you find yourself in the backyard. That's what they do to people. You have to think for yourself. There is nothing wrong in a government being in charge of healthcare, education for the people.
You are socialist.
It's happening here.
I just want to say something as well.
Listen. Yeah. And this is the problem. When people are talking, just be patient. When they are done, whatever good idea you have, you can bring it.
Yeah, you look civilized.
Go ahead, Sekou, finish.
Yes, bro.
So we have this universal healthcare system in most of the Scandinavian countries. That's what they are doing now. They are doing most of these things. So for me, somebody trying to build a welfare state, you say he's a Marxist. That means all African kingdoms were Marxist before Marx was born.
Marx was born.
So so many African kingdoms were what they used to do. So the Ujamaa system is also Marxist. The one that was founded.
Yes, it is.
So Marxist now is the founder of the idea of a country working together or a nation having a
Nyerere was a Marxist.
He is not a founder.
It's very unsynchronized.
Julius Nyerere was a Marxist.
Listen.
All right, so let me ask you guys a question. Let me ask you guys one last question.
Yeah, right? This is the last question. Then we're going to go to you, IC3. We're going to come to you. Don't worry.
Yeah, man.
One sec. So after coffee, this question, we're going to go to IC3, and then I'm going to come back to Sekou to answer the question that I asked a while ago in terms of liberation movements that are going on the continent, and then we're going to close the show. All right. So go ahead.
I want to say something quickly. Nobody has a problem.
Sorry. 1 second.
Yes, brother.
Sorry. Very quickly, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Nobody. I noticed that nobody has a problem with Mussolini and Mao Song when they used to copy the Honorable Marcus Garvey's blueprint. You know, nobody ever brings that up, but they're always quick to say that we're copying Marxism and anarchism, and I find that very strange, man. You know what I mean? But yeah.
And it's also the fact that when it comes to these dynamics, nobody ever brings up the criminality of America and Britain. Yeah, everybody was criminal apart from you know, the heads of state, the militaries of America and Britain. But go ahead, Coffee.
Yo, PS Ramon when I bring up. All right, so is it the position of you guys, right, especially Sekou and Shaka, that if America never invade Grenada, if America did leave Cuba alone, if America did leave all the socialist countries in the third world alone, is it your opinion that socialism would have led to the economic development of the third world?
So that's not necessarily the argument that I'm making. I think, however, that you mentioned something a minute ago about having something to trade with the world. None of us, and I'm sure I can speak for Sekou on this point, would be against trading with the world. The issue is trading with the world on our own terms. Yeah, that is the point. And so I am answering the question. Just relax for a second, please. Cuba is doing quite well. In fact, all with what's it called, an American embargo that had been imposed for decades. Yeah, so it's the reason that if it never had the global restrictions that have been imposed upon it, that it might have the space to do some other things that would be beneficial to the nation. Okay, I don't think that the success of or a failure of a government or a society is based upon whether it is socialist versus capitalist. This is the paradigm that the Western imperialists want to lock you into because it suits them interests. My political agenda is not capitalism versus socialism. My political agenda is African autonomy, yeah, world African sovereignty. The culture. I've answered your question. I've answered your question. So the reality is that there are some people who consider trade as good as long as it meets the dictates of Western Europe. Yeah. So for example, sorry, 1 second. For example, if you say, well, actually, we would love to trade with you, but we don't want to trade with you on these terms. We don't want to trade with you on the terms of the IMF and the World Bank and of America. Yes. So we would love to sell you the uranium or the coltan. Yeah. But when we sell you the coltan, we're not going to facilitate a situation in which your company doesn't pay any tax in our nation. We're not going to facilitate a situation in which the laborers who are actually mining these resources have to work for little or nothing or pittance, poor working standards. Genocidal conditions, ecological
is based on productivity, not how much you think that people should get.
Productivity as defined. I am answering the question. Productivity as defined within a capitalist economy is different, to how it might be defined when people are working or developing their economy on different principles. For example, you talk about efficiency. And efficiency within a capitalist economy is really based upon numbers. It's how much you can produce.
How much people want your product?
No, it's not even as that. It's how much you can produce.
That's not.
And so because that is the
production is based on demand.
Because that is the definitive, and exactly. And so the Western demand is what is currently dominating geopolitics, not the world demand. There are not various different demands that are dominating the thing. It is the demand of the West. So what is good for the West tends to dominate how the program actually runs. So, for example, it is how is it efficient?
Go back to the question.
1 second,
I am not
finished. So, if efficiency in production is the goal, and we're going to sacrifice, for example, human rights for the sake of efficiency, this would be considered inefficient within an Ubuntu conceptualization. Because people are an end in on of themselves. So if the well-being of people is centralized with the concept of what it means to be efficient and productive, then we could never have a situation in which oil is a profitable industry that sacrifices the ecology or destroys the ecology of human beings in one part of the world.
No, but that's
I don't know why. Sorry, I don't know why this is considered efficient on a global scale.
No, that's a false dichotomy. I didn't say that. No.
Sorry, it is highly inefficient and highly unproductive to destroy people's ecology for the sake of having oil in Britain and America,
Yeah,
and that
bring
is
up
what is taking place
Salman.
today.
Yeah,
ExxonMobil and Shell
So
and Chevron
Grenada on the Norris, Bishop.
are criminal institutions that are profitable and efficient and productive
Yeah.
in a capitalist economy,
Yeah,
but
That's
so
right.
highly
Grenada,
inefficient and unproductive to the lives of people.
Yeah,
in the
Grenada
yeah.
under the Marxist
Go ahead,
government of
go
Bishop,
ahead,
if
go-
left
go ahead,
alone,
Sekou. Go ahead, Sekou, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, so I will not waste his time. My answer will be yes. So let me see what he comes. My answer is
big up,
no,
Sekou.
no.
Yo, man, I tell you, I love that you tell. Yo.
Wait. When you start talking, I don't talk. Is that true?
Yeah, man.
Or you
Yeah.
should I allow you to talk, then I talk
Basically,
later?
I don't know what. Yeah, go ahead.
Civilized.
If he wants to talk, I can let him talk.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, go
So
ahead,
it's my
Sekou. Go ahead. It's your time.
Okay. Africa has been practicing capitalism and since the European dictated it, and we are still the poorest. Our infrastructure is still, we are indebted, we have a huge debt, and we've been forced to produce raw material because the European market demanded it. And those markets want our raw material, and they stop us from being industrialized. When Kwame Nkrumah practiced socialism, when Sekou Toure practiced socialism, they built more traditional industry and infrastructure within the country without those loans than the capitalist Ghana and Guinea of today. Explain that to me.
Just to highlight that even more. Sorry, 1 second. Just to highlight that even more. Just to highlight that even more.
Kwame
Just to
Nkrumah
highlight
was
that
a
even more.
socialist.
Sorry, but he was a socialist. That's never been in doubt.
But
sorry.
not.
Sorry, but you said the socialist
love
world.
evade that and talk about
said,
he was
I'm
a
not
nationalist
I'm
and
not
this
evading
and
anything.
that.
Again.
You gotta.
The standard here for me is not based upon simply whether one is capitalist or socialist. We're not confined to that dichotomy. Yes, any government that has the capacity to self-determine, yes, will be able to find some successes. Any government that is not fighting against an onslaught, yes, from another government will have the space to work out its own situation in society, yes, better than a situation in which they are under siege from another government. That is the point. And it is a fact that, so the defining factor here is not whether they were socialist or capitalist. Yeah.
But Sekou, that's the defining factor. He's saying that socialism is more productive than capitalism.
That's not what he's saying. He's saying that
But
the government.
devil's advocate. That's what, yeah.
Brethren, instead,
and I agree with him.
Kwame Nkrumah socialism build more.
Coffee, discipline yourself.
Yeah, brother,
Discipline yourself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. What he said was that Nkrumah the Nkrumah government was more productive than any government since any capitalist government since Nkrumah. That is a fact. Yeah, there has been all of the governments since Nkrumah. Yes, cannot stand up to Nkrumah in terms of what he built in a decade in Ghana. That is a numerical and substantiated
Brethren, without getting into the weeds of productivity.
Hold on.
I'm glad that Sekou admit that socialism would have.
No, he was on playing devil's advocate, brother.
Right, so we're gonna wrap up now. You've got what you want out of this conversation because you are wrapped up in the Cold War, and so because of that, you need to
but I get an admission. Socialism is
you need to define things into America, right, and Britain. I understand that, right? But the point is that he's correct. His analysis is correct. I even said it in relation to Cuba. I believe that Cuba would have achieved far more than it has right now if it didn't have to contend with the constant threat of invasion from America.
You guys think that socialism is a productive system?
Any nation that
socialism
doesn't have
is not
to
productive,
with,
really?
any nation that doesn't have to contend with the constant threat of invasion. Any nation that doesn't have to contend with the constant threat of invasion is able to free up that capacity and use that mental and physical energy towards other more productive things. That's just a reality.
And therefore, right? Socialism would have worked, right?
If we're talking about productivity and efficiency, but we don't want to apply, but we don't want to respect and acknowledge the fact of what was produced under Ghana in Nkrumah, sorry, then I just been on.
Government can't
We're
produce
moving on
anything,
now. We're gonna
Shaka.
move on.
I'm
We're gonna
sad
move
to
on.
tell
We're
you,
gonna move
said
on now.
government
Yeah,
don't
get
We're
to
gonna move
produce
on
move on,
now.
yeah.
anything.
We're gonna move on now. We're gonna
It
move
was
on
a
now.
sham. That's
Coffee,
what
we're gonna move on
socialism
now.
is, a sham.
Yeah,
Coffee,
it's better,
coffee.
yeah.
We're going to move on now. Thank you very much.
Mm,
All right. By the way, brothers and sisters, I have
mhm,
most graciously, I don't have to do this, but I have
mhm,
most graciously opened my platform to Brother Coffee
mhm.
to come and propagandize on behalf of the liberals of the world.
Yeah, but
On,
you have
Okay.
on,
biased
on,
against
on
me.
Yeah.
the 15th of March, yeah. So
You
feel free
already
to
Right.
have
come
biased
and hear.
against me.
Sorry, feel free to come and hear the
Yeah.
liberal solutions to Black liberation from
Right.
Brother Coffee on the 15th of March. Yeah, he's going to minister
Okay.
to us on
Mhm.
liberalism as the forgotten
Yeah.
path to Black
Right.
liberation. And you once again will be able to ask him questions and
Oh wow.
engage with him during that point. All right, during that sit down. Okay, so feel free to come on the 15th of March. Right. The order was IC3 and then Sekou. Go ahead.
Mhm.
Yes, I'd like to go back on the very important point you're speaking about, the relationship between organization and identity.
Mm.
So obviously, if you cannot identify who you're organizing, you'll not be able to organize effectively.
Thank you for bringing me back to that point. Go ahead. I'll make a point after this.
Right. So the discussion usually ends around the concept of Black Africa and the Black African diaspora. Yeah, Black Africa, Black African diaspora. Okay. So what's the clash between these two entities? Black identity, which is compromised, is usually they're usually trying to sell it to the African mainland.
So repeat your last statement.
Yeah. Black identity, which has been compromised, is often they're trying to sell Black identity to the African mainland.
Okay, go ahead.
And those in Africa are trying to sell African identity to the Black diaspora. So a lot of effort and resources are pushed. So both African identity and Black identity have been compromised. Because those identities have been compromised, there's a lot of confusion, and those two terms two identities have not been able to be used effectively to organize effectively, because there's a clash between Africanness and Blackness. Africans don't want to accept Blackness because they see it's Western, and West don't want to accept Africanness because they said they're not in Africa. So that's so a lot of effort and energy and resources is pushed in trying to sell Africanness to Blackness and Blackness to Africanness. So the solution I'm suggesting is that we should focus our limited resources on an identity that does not impact Africanness or Blackness, so that both Africa and the African diaspora or Black diaspora can organize effectively. So we've sorted out the identity question, then we'll be able to organize effectively. Now, I did say, just finishing off, that Blackness has been compromised because in the West, people say, "Oh, is it politically black?" Or other people say, "Well, I'm dark skinned, so I'm black." Or Blackness is about melanin. So there's all kind of confusion about Blackness. What precisely is Blackness? And then there's all kinds of confusion about what precisely is Africanness. Oh, so the white people say, "Well, I'm African as well because I was born on the continent and I've been initiated into an African tribe, so I'm more African than you," and so on. Yeah. So
My brother, these are factors though that are deliberately employed, strategies that are deliberately employed by the enemy. Yeah. So
that's right.
One of the first things that we have to do is understand these as strategies of the enemy. Yeah. And I said thank you for bringing this back up again, because I did want to respond to this in relation to the idea that identity is not sufficient. Of course, identity is not sufficient. The idea is not call yourself African and all problems will be solved. Yeah, simply identifying as African. The idea within a Black nationalist Pan-Africanist context is to operationalize, institutionalize, and organize the identity around specific goals. Yeah, so identity is not sufficient, but it is imperative. Yes, it is imperative. So we don't negate the importance of identity by declaring its lack of sufficiency. Everybody understands that. Yeah, there is no point in having an identity if it's not organized in some kind of institution. Otherwise, it doesn't have any functionality, any power, or anything like that. Okay, so that stands on its own. I see this the idea of blackness and Africans as an unnecessary antagonism. Yeah, that is based around one, anti-Africanness on both sides of the Atlantic, yes, and two, a lack of understanding among us as African people coming from varying experiences. Baba Martin Delaney speaks of the concept of identity as something that is like a gravitational pull that people center themselves around. It doesn't mean that everybody that centers themselves around the identity does everything exactly the same. Unanimity is not a prerequisite of unity. Yes, you can also have unity in diversity, and so there are expressions of what it means to be Black and African that we identify within the context of our broader cultural, political, and economic goals and agenda. And once we're engaged in the organizational work, then those problems will work themselves out in the process of the organizing, not in the process of the pontification and theorizing, but in the process of the organizing, because all identities are made manifest within organization. You know what? We live in Britain. Say, well, we need a revival of British values. Yes, and they go and sometimes they can be very vague in defining what exactly is British values. But when they go to Parliament, and when and Bank of England and the British military and Virgin and so British values are made manifest in the institutions of Britain. So we know what British values look like and what they are, based on how they function within the institutional format. We know what it is because the education system is based upon it. Yeah, we know what it is because the health system is based. You know what I'm saying? Is based upon it.
Health system is based on British values,
and so on and so forth. Yes, it is.
You guys said
go ahead.
NHS was socialist.
Go ahead. This is a very Go ahead, Sekou. Now we're gonna finish here. We're already over time. But Sekou, anything that you want to say, and then the question in terms of the liberation movements that you know of on the continent, please address that. Thank you.
The state of, you asked me a question. You said the state of Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism on the continent.
Yes, it's specifically in relation to activism, organizations that are doing work or movements that are currently in train.
So, let me give you a general idea of how the Pan-African idea is, the state of it on the entire continent. First of all, there is no president right now in Africa that is openly Pan-African, apart from the Ghanaian president a little bit. There is no one. So they have been overthrown, but the Pan-African idea for some reason did not go away. It always rotates in their nose. So we see it in the African Union documents. They keep using the word Pan-Africanism, but it lost its meaning and its value. They use it now to entice the population because they know that people still know Pan-Africanism. So they use the word, but they are not really implementing it as Kwame Nkrumah would do. So there is this set of hypocrisy around Pan-Africanism on the continent, where some leaders, when they see that their leadership is threatening, and the need of philosophy to rally the people around themselves, they run to Pan-Africanism. When the people in North Africa, this is important what I'm saying, because that's where you understand what we mean by culture and what have you. When the people in North Africa, whenever their leadership is threatened, they run to Islamic philosophy. They run to the Islamic Brotherhood. We see it in Egypt, we see other presidents, in order for them to fight. But in the entire Black Africa, so-called, which is the majority part of the continent, whenever any leader is threatening, his leadership is threatened either by the West or certain opposition that he want to deal with, and he want a populist movement, he run to Pan-Africanism. That is the only ideology that moves African people. We see it in Mali right now. We see it in Burkina Faso right now. And we've seen it in Cote d'Ivoire in 2011. They always fall back on Pan-Africanism. But the sad truth is, after they win the victory, then they betray the people and the philosophy. That is the problem. So we, the Pan-African now, we have to be smart to say we can give them all the support and get on the streets and get people for them in the name of the flag, the red, black, and green. Then by the time they get the power, then they go to London and sit down with the king and sit down with the prime minister and they start speaking like neoliberal. So there are different movements on the continent that still keep the spirit of Pan-Africanism alive. In terms of the political movement, the most active one that is in the mainstream is the economic freedom fighter of South Africa, Julius Malema. So yeah, he's a Marxist. He doesn't hide that. He aligned with,
but he nationalized it for his people.
Go ahead, Sekou. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was an interruption. So he admitted that he's a Marxist, and but for him, there is a struggle. What we say always, a liberation. He understands that the essence of this Pan-Africanism is liberation. That the Mandela struggle did not succeed in giving the land back to the South African people. And the capitalist system in the country has generated what Walter Rudnick called the primitive capital. The white people were able to generate the primitive capital. So they are billionaires and trillionaires. Then they take the poor white South African who came out of apartheid to come and compete with him in a free market. The poor South African does not have land. He doesn't have means of production. He doesn't have even the education to acquire better skills. So now he remains on the table. So a caste system is created like it is in all Western world.
Yes, sir.
So Julius Malema is saying, in order for us to get it back, we need a socialist project to collect the land from these people first of all. Okay? And say that the government owns the land. The idea is to dispossess the white billionaires, and the state has to own it and redistribute it to the people. So this is Julius Malema's struggle. And he has been very, very effective. He has done, and he is the most organized, his party is the most organized political party in South Africa. Even those who didn't, they respect it.
They respect his organization,
Very much.
Organized. And his Pan-Africanism is so strong that even the capitalist black liberal in South Africa have decided to buy into white supremacy now. They have started to Africa to attack Nigerians because they don't provide jobs for South Africans. So when South Africans, they say it is the Nigerians and the other black people coming here taking your job. You know, that's what all the neoliberals do. They try to escape from their responsibility. And they say it is the Nigerians and the other blacks taking your job. So the South Africans get on the street and they start attacking the fellow black. And Julius Malema tells them, no, that's not the struggle. The Nigerians is us. The Congolese is us. The problem is that somebody is controlling. There's a monopoly. The mode of production is in the hand of few people, while the majority don't have food to eat. That's where the struggle is. The Nigerian does not control mining. The Nigerian does not control your billions and your mining and your diamond and your gold. It goes to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So Julian Malema is trying to divert the consciousness, and he has done it so well that he put his political life on the line and say even if he doesn't get a vote, he will continue to say open border for South Africa. Every black man is not a stranger in South Africa. So his political consciousness in terms of Pan-Africanism is so elevated that the African youth around the continent are inspired by him. So the party started spreading. It started spreading to neighboring Mozambique and even got into Liberia. So as I speak to you, we created a branch of EFF in Liberia. We now call ours the EFFL.
Yes, bro.
In terms of the political ideology, we agree on so many things in terms of the continental unity of African people, in terms of an Africa is not a foreigner in an African country, in the idea of creating an African imagination for Africa. So we agree
in terms of Marxism.
Therefore, we have this brother is being indisciplined. I'm sorry.
I know. Sorry a second. Let's continue to talk. What it is that the interest that Brother Coffee aligns with are those of the billionaires that you were talking about in South Africa. So challenging them is
that's not true.
Yeah, that's what's happening at the moment. So the idea of taking away land from that white minority is challenging the people that he aligns with.
Use a better argument.
You can.
The situation right now apparently is preferable to him than the situation of actually providing land for more Africans. So go ahead. Let's continue to talk, brother.
So there is also activism going on. Those who are not in the mainstream politics, they are now having political party. They are now running for office. They also have activism. So I'm very sure there are many organizations I don't know directly, but I know about them. Like the late Thomas Sankara organization, the Black Institute, they are still having their movement going on. And I think even the Gavi organization is still having.
The UNIA ACL has 4 chapters in Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso. There's one developing in Kenya. There's one in Ghana. And more to be announced. Also, when you mentioned Kemi Seba earlier, Sekou.
Yes.
His organization is called Agence Pan-Africanist. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the activists that is well known today is Kemi Seba. And Kemi Seba from Benin Republic is a French-speaking brother who has been inspired, and one of his mentors is Khalid, actually, and other Pan-Africanists. And for him, he called it Afrique libre ou la mort. For him, Africa must be liberated or we just die, because there is no way out of it. So for him, the Africa you are seeing right now with so-called free market, president, democracy is a joke. There is just a flag, countries with flag, but they don't really exist because they have been deprived of industrialization, which is the actual core of economy. The IMF and the World Bank, these institutions, these capitalist demons, they have prevented this country from industrializing. What they do is to make them, they say, produce more raw materials. Because the industries in Europe need the cocoa, they need the coffee, they need the coltan, they need the uranium. So if you build the institution, if you build the industry, then this country cannot produce. So there will be a problem in the market. So you give the raw material, and this country do the finished goods. That is the unspoken rule. So anytime an African country want to industrialize, they cripple you. So Kemi Seba is saying they do it in one of the way they do it is through the financial system. They created a rogue financial system called the CFA,
CFA franc.
CFA franc, a French currency introduced in West Africa, but controlled by France. And all countries keep their reserves in France, and France making profit out of the reserve, and the currency is not printed or owned by African, but it's owned by France. And they tell our capitalist professors to come and sit on TV and speak gibberish, and they act like they are intellectuals, while in reality they are full educated fools.
Yes, sir.
And they keep the people impoverished,
Yes.
And Kemi Seba is trying to fight against that.
Mm-hmm.
And the intellectuals are telling him that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's competition. Competing with, how are you competing with 300, 400, 500 years? Somebody depleted your resources, control all your institutions, your financial, then you are competing. What compete? Now here's how the competing go. Every product,
I'll show you. I'll teach you that.
listen, every French-speaking country in West Africa does not have the right to call any other country to come and buy the product, except the French have exhausted all the list, and they say we don't want this particular product. Then now you have the right to other people.
And Sekou, that's the point. That's what them called free market.
That's what, the free market.
Next month I'll educate you guys.
Go ahead.
Free education, socialist style.
They have monopoly to import certain things into Africa that they don't allow anybody, even if you are a black billionaire, there's already a monopoly given. And I will give you the name of company, Buick. You have country like a company like Buick and other people, they control all the seaport. They have monopoly.
Yes.
Government gave them that monopoly.
Excuse me, let me speak, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. So this is the political activism, is to create the consciousness of the black people, the young people, as they get involved in politics, because your future has been sold in the capitalist system. You have been lied to through democracy. So we do these rituals every year and do elections, but actually there is a selection going on. So the political activism is going on. Then there are NGOs, Pan-African NGOs as well. Right. Few of them, do other humanitarian work and all of that. So that is going on. In terms of academic and cultural movement, that's where the Afrocentric community is doing very, very well. Right. The academic area, they are in, like Cote d'Ivoire, for example, they have started building some private colleges. They have introduced in African studies in a proper, because the history on the continent, believe it or not, is a European history.
Yes.
The educational curriculum on the continent is founded by European Union, is designed to tell the African that he was responsible for slavery. It is designed to tell the African that he has nothing to do with Black America or the Caribbean or the Jamaica. He's just a Ghanaian. He's just a Nigerian. He's just a Senegalese.
Yes.
Okay. Even the way recently, Brother Shaka Tango, he pointed out, they were having a competition. They said, who is the first to produce jollof rice? And you see Ghanaians fighting. We are the first to produce. And you find out, 1960, there's no Ghana, there is no Nigeria. So the jollof rice was still there. So who produced it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The history book, I think one of the Guinness Book of Record came and say Senegal. There was the French. So that's what Brother Shaka said. No, you have to say the Niger River, even the one Niger, even you have to. But in my language, we call that river, we call it Jeliba. That's the great river. Jeliba, the first civilization along the Jeliba is where this civilization occurred.
Yes.
The Jeliba, we just say, a white man came and discovered it and call it River Niger. And we've been calling it Jeliba for centuries, even before he was born. So that's the history. They cooked up our history and gave it to us. There is an academic movement to do what we call the decolonization of our education. Because a tribal, we have tribes, but our empire, we're managing these tribes in a very, very different way.
Sekou, pause there for a second. Because I want you to address that issue specifically. What I'm going to do, though, I'm going to give you some time to do that because it is an important one. I'm going to hold on for a sec, but I do want to say goodbye to everybody else first. I'm going to wrap up on this issue, So, Kel, give thanks for coming through, my brother.
Big up Shaka, big up Baba, big up brothers. Appreciate it.
Dex, big up yourself. Give thanks for coming through.
Hey, where can we find Sekou at? Please.
I will make sure he says that before he comes off here. So stay tuned, all right? Stay tuned. But thank you for joining me, my brother. I'll thank you for your love as well on the Omawale presentation. I appreciate that very much.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully that's that's informative for many brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us. And also Mr. IC3, thank you very much, my brother. Yeah, peace. Thank you for your contribution. Very, very unique contribution, and allowed us to get into some things. So I appreciate it. And thank you very much, Coffee. And Coffee will be back
Yeah,
on the
man,
15th of
respect.
March. Yeah, blessings. All right, so I'm gonna remove everybody else from the chat now. And I'm gonna hold over. I'm gonna give Sekou some special treatment. I would say that at the minute, yeah. But yeah, the reason why I'm holding you over on this specific issue, Sekou, is because this issue has been flagged up as a reason for negating Pan-Africanism. So people are justifying their allegiance to American imperialism, Western imperialism, British imperialism, French imperialism by saying, but on the continent, there's tribalism. Yeah, so somehow differences and conflicts among Africans on the continent justifies you pledging your allegiance to the Star Spangled Banner and the Union Jack. Yeah. Now I'm gonna say something about that before we close here, but can you just give an assessment of the tribalism issue? Because the idea is that all over the place, Africans do nothing other than fight tribal wars with each other, and that's the reason why Pan-Africanism is not succeeding on the continent. And the idea that somehow, if Pan-Africanism is not succeeding on the continent, it gives us in the diaspora an excuse to not engage in Pan-Africanism. But yeah, so let's address the tribalism issue, please. If
First of all, I will be specific to West Africa so that
Yes,
we
sir.
can get an understanding. You need to understand, first of all, there were 3 great empires in West Africa.
yes, sir.
Okay, we have the Ouagadougou Empire of what
sir.
you call Ghana.
Yes,
We
sir.
had the Mali and the Songhai Empire.
Yes, sir.
Now, these empires, they are, contrary to what many people believe, were not started by Islamic movement. The Ouagadougou empires were started before Islam came. Because some of the primary texts that we have from Ibn Battuta and what have you, the king was not even a Muslim. The founder of Mali Empire, Sunjata Keita, never Islamic. Maybe we can say Songhai was a little bit already Islamized, but they were still keeping the tradition. Now, these empires were having what you would call so-called tribes today. All these languages and tribes in West Africa, most of them were part of this empire.
Yeah.
But there was a system that was in place, which our intellectuals don't want to study now. A system of consensus.
Yes.
A system of consensus of participation of all groups so that there is no minority versus majority. Every region and people were self-governed, and the king was the sovereign and distribute his authority go to the people according to their region. But everybody respected the authority. What the empires were doing, what Gio was calling the detribalization, but without doing it in a way of forcing the people. So the urban area, the big cities, they choose one language. For example, the Mandinka was prominent in Mali, and the Soninke was prominent in Ouagadougou. So when you come into the big cities, you start to speak the language, the business language. They call it the language of the Jula. They call it Julakan. The language of commerce, the language of business. In which language do people do business and transaction? That language become the language of the empire. So everybody begins to speak it, even if it is not their native language or not. It is the language of commerce. So that's how one language became a language for everybody. But there was never a political class or classification of people because they were in certain. Because sometimes the emperor did not come from the same ethnic group. Sunjata Keita and the Zumawuru Kante were not from the same ethnic group. But the language of the empire was there. But what has happened? What has happened in our democratic area? The democracy we inherited from the West is a democracy of exclusion. So when we inherited that democracy, we did not redefine it in our context. So we brought in multi-party political democracy, and every ethnic group decided to create a political party. That was the genesis of the problem.
Yes.
So every ethnic group became affiliated to a political party to win election. So the differences that was celebrated now became exploited by politicians and their campaign. And the Europeans did that from the very beginning. They exploited it during the colonial era. What they did was they would look at certain ethnic group, maybe because of certain phenotype, and they gave them certain political position, and they disenfranchised the other ethnic group. So one ethnic group was having affiliation to the white man, and the other were not, and that was creating political tension. We saw it in Rwanda, where the Tutsi were elevated above the Bahutu because they had long nose and have so-called Caucasian features.
Yes, sir. Yes,
they put the Fulani against Sekou Touré. They were telling the Fulani, you are related to Arab because you are light-skinned and whatever, even though you are West African. And then the Sekou Touré people, you have to overthrow them. So Sekou Touré spent his entire life fighting against the Fulani. That's why some people call him dictator.
Yeah.
Look at these things. Even Kwame Nkrumah has to face the tribal issue. So it was exploited during the colonial era. It was what the French call divide and rule. So they find out that when they see a group of Africans, they say, how do we rule these people if they are united? So they look for the area where we have little differences, the languages. So they now use that as an opportunity to split, further divide us. So now the so-called democracy, as it is presented in the West, is now working in Africa because it has been tribalized. So it's an artificial problem and not a natural problem of the African mind. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes. No, thank you for that breakdown, brother. And there's so much more we could go into, because this is an excuse, right, that I hear a lot, and it's like any reason, like the extent to which tribalism exists on the continent is not an argument against Pan-Africanism, it's an argument for it. If we could actually understand, right, that to whatever extent so-called tribalism exists, it is retarding the political and economic development of our nations, then we need a strategy for overcoming so-called tribalism. And when we look throughout our history, whenever we've been able to overcome tribal conflict, quote unquote, we have seen successes. Yeah, one of the reasons why Papa Patrice Lumumba was killed was because of his capacity to unite people across so-called tribe. America Cabral, in the book Return to the Source, speaks to the fact that one of the reasons why the Portuguese were not ready to deal with the effectiveness of the freedom fighters in Guinea-Bissau is because of the fact that they were able to bridge the so-called tribal conflict. Yeah, and the Portuguese didn't expect them to be able to effectively do that. All right, so we see examples within the Pan-African movement of being able to overcome those differences and effectuate them towards an anti-imperialist and anti-colonialist agenda. So the saying, well, tribalism exists in Africa, so therefore I can't be a Pan-Africanist, is a cop-out. Yeah, it's a significant cop-out and simply a justification for people that want to pledge allegiance to Western empire. Why? Because it's easier to do so in today's world than to fight against it. It's very simple. It's a cowardly response. Yeah. I mean no disrespect when I say this, but Mama Frances Cress Wilson said we have to deal with our fear. It is the position of cowards, yeah, to say that I'm going to use the deficiencies among my brothers and sisters for the reason why I'm not doing what I know to be effective, what history demonstrates is effective. It's a ridiculous statement, and I wish people would just, you know what, I'm allegiant to Britain, America, and France. Let's say that. Yeah, I want to absorb myself into the empire. Yeah, I love the white man. Just tell people, say, listen, I love the white man. Yeah, I want to sit down and jump into bed with the white man. Just say that. Yeah, and we don't have don't mention Pan-Africanism at all. Don't speak on Black nationalism at all. Just say, I want to jump in a bed with Wazungu. Yes,
that's all.
That's it.
It is, I agree with you, Shaka. It is a position of cowardice. There's no other word for it. Because, in fact, that's why I love the statement when Diop said the history of Black Africa is not complete until it's connected to Egypt. Any African historian who tried to avoid Egyptian history because, white people are against that, then he's been cowardly, he's been timid, because anytime they are against something, then we are scared to explore that area. Because now we see, tribalism. Everybody's talking about African tribalism, so we can't fix it. It's impossible. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So that's why the Obenga in a recent conference they had 2022, the search for new African thought, where he said, what make a people great is the ability to conquer impossibility. That's what the greatness is about. It's not that it's easy. That's what made them great people. It is their ability to conquer impossibility. China.
There was a time before there was a United Kingdom of Great Britain. There was a time before there was a United States of America. There was a time before there was a France that is properly constituted. In fact, Belgium, Germany, and Italy just about existed at the time when the scramble for Africa was taking place. They were very, very new nations. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, go ahead.
If you look at China pulling billions of people out of poverty, I mean, millions of people, close to 1 billion, out of poverty, and now they are second most powerful, and they did that in few decades. If you told them that some years back, some few decades back, it would be impossible. So your ability, even they were having war, China was having civil war, different clans and different groups were trying to break away from the Chinese empire. And it took Mao to bring all these people back together and said, there is more we can gain if we stand together. People think all Chinese speak the same. If you go into China, every region have its own language. You see, but they have identified a political consciousness that is about survival. Because look, Shaka, there's one thing I tell people. I say, these people that study evolution, I think they need to study philosophy first of all before they start studying all these science subjects. Because when you look at an organism, everything an organism does is for its survival. It is because of survival that evolution even took place in the first place. That's what they call it natural selection. It's trying to survive. It's trying to find a way to fit into its environment. That's why it keeps evolving. So black people, we need to always find the best means necessary for our survival. If this unity is the best means of our survival, we can't escape it. It's like committing suicide. So nature will select us out. The natural selection will kick us out because it is the only way we can protect ourselves. Without economic and military sovereignty of black people, will be wiped out. Look at the sad thing that happened recently in Tunisia. President of Tunisia, and I'm glad it happened. It's not like I'm trying to be sorry or victim, but I'm trying. I'm not happy and I'm not sad about it. It's okay for black people to learn these things.
Learn the lesson. That's right.
Yeah, a group of black people migrating to Tunisia because it's closer to, so that they find a way to cross to Europe. And because Tunisia has borders with African countries, an African nation, is so-called. But they are Arabs who their political consciousness is towards the Middle East. So the president came on national TV and said, there's so much black people in this country and it's going to affect the demography. He doesn't want to say it's going to affect the gene of his people because their women might marry black guys.
The interesting thing you said is that one somebody, and I don't think this was the president, but there was an interview going around where somebody said that their values are African, not Tunisian.
Right. So, so they said they should be kicked out. So the black people that they are kicking out were Muslims, like the Tunisian. They all go to the same mosque, they pray. They speak Arabic. Oh, my name is Abdullah. Sometimes they have the same name, but the Tunisian is telling him, despite your name, despite you go to my mosque, you are not me.
You're not me. That's right. Yes.
You are a black man, and there is nothing we have in common in terms of the global geopolitics. I cannot align myself with you, black African.
That's right. That's right.
The Tunisian knows he's in Africa. He plays African Cup of Nations every year. But he knows that the politically aligning himself with you does not give him advantage in Middle East or Europe. It's all geopolitics and economics.
That's
so
right.
Now you African, you come back home, then you say, no, I'm Malian, I'm Black American, I'm Jamaican. What other people are aligned with the group in order for their survival? You are trying to diminish yourself for you to be eliminated. So that's why I tell people who are doing the ADO and the Foundation of Black America, I say, I'm with you. As far as reparation goes, I'm with you. But you want to be xenophobic, you are isolating yourself to make yourself a easy target for the enemy to eliminate you. They won't take them a second.
Yep, 100%, my brother. Thank you very much. Yeah, Sekou, like I said, I'm going to invite you back, and you to speak on whatever you want to. Yes, I'm going to let you pick the subject, and we'll pick a day in the coming months for you to come back. And I'm sure brothers and sisters would like to hear more from you. But give thanks for your effort, bro. Like I said, I was already distancing myself from certain platforms because I just thought that the attack against you was thoroughly unjustified, and disgusting, in fact. Yeah, and some people really showed their true colors in relation to that. But you've got, you're always welcome here, and whenever you're on Sunday, I'm gonna be there. You know what I'm saying? Because you have a lot to teach, my brother, and I just appreciate the energy that you bring to all the platforms. And I also want to commend you for the humility and the grace with which you've operated, even in spite of the unjust attacks that have been against you. Yeah, I want to publicly say that to you, my brother. I think you've handled yourself very, very well. And I think brothers and sisters who are of clean mind and conscience can see that. Yeah, so you have support out here, my brother. And you've even encouraged me to go well over my finishing time today. so thank you for your contributions. Thank you for your contributions. I'm gonna let you go. We'll talk somewhere in the future. Yeah, give thanks, okay, brother. Yeah, give thanks. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. All right, family. Yeah, man. So you know what I mean. Enough things are going, kings and queens. Enough things are going around here, because. I don't know about you, but I've enjoyed today's show. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We've had a good conversation, and put some flesh, on the bones of a lot of these conversations that we've been having around Pan-Africanism. I think it's clear to me that in conversing with the brothers and sisters who have been part of the conversation, a lot of them, particularly those who are attacking Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism, don't really know what it is. For those that do know something or another, they unfortunately, I'm not taking any more contributions to the panel at the moment. So those who are just coming in, it's not going to go on. I do need to jump off. So thank you very much for coming through, but I can't do any further. Okay, and I think some of these are trolls as well, so I'm not even going to bother. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, for those who have some knowledge, their knowledge of it is very limited. My presentation, for example, was about Pan-Africanism. It was not about look for the East and the Black today, but I had enough to say on Garfield, but if they are I asked about Sekou. Oh, I forgot to get Sekou's details. Sekou, if you're still listening, post your social media, your details and whatever in the chat. Yeah, I don't think Sekou has a channel, but he is on a channel, or at least was on a channel called Focus Liberia. Yeah, Focus Liberia. So check out Focus Liberia, but I'm not sure if he's still there. So Sekou, if you're still listening, please post your social media where people can find you in the chat, and I'll post it. Yeah, and I'll wait to close the show before you do that. So after you do that. So yeah, but yeah, big up Issa. Issa, like I said, I have enough to say Pan Garfi, but him now come true Pan Shakara speaks for say nothing. So what was I saying? Yeah, I was called to speak on Pan-Africanism, and people want to engage me exclusively in discussion about Black America and Black American history. And Africans in America have made an indelible contribution towards Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, a fundamental contribution, a contribution without which the traditions involved in it would not be as rich as they are today. But Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism is not exclusive to Africans in America. Okay. And so trying to chart the history exclusively through that lens is to do a disservice to the tradition itself. And I'm sure I speak with confidence knowing that Africans in America who are sincerely of the Black nationalist Pan-Africanist tradition will affirm what I'm saying. Yeah, will affirm what I'm saying without equivocation. And so we see the fact that a lot of the argumentation is designed, like I've said before, to simply justify allegiance to American imperialism. And for some reason, brothers and sisters have decided that in order to justify their allegiance to American imperialism, to remove the dissonance, so to speak, the cognitive dissonance, they have to demonize and neutralize the power potential of Pan-Africanism, of Black nationalist Pan-Africanism, by declaring it fundamentally outdated and a pipe dream. Yeah, that is what's taking place. And whenever you hear the pipe dream rhetoric, you notice that they will never substantiate why it is in fact a pipe dream. And so I'm going to leave it there, kings and queens. I'm going to leave it there, and we're going to close as we began with the word sounds of the eminent prophet Omowale Malcolm X, yeah, because that's a good way to close any show. And I want to thank everybody for coming through the build today. No doubt there'll be further conversations, and more importantly, we're going to be doing more work in terms of profiling the work that is taking place in the Pan-African world. Because we always talk about solutions, but solutions are not something that we can talk, or there's something that we can only talk about to a degree. We need to be able to demonstrate them. And so throughout this year, what I'm hoping to be able to do is demonstrate people that are doing work and are activating solutions in the process of that work. Tendai Mwali, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Muzimu Mokuro, give praises unto the great ancestors. Abibi Fahodie, Abibi Tumi. African liberation and African power for all African people. Share. Share.
The only revolution based on loving your enemy is the Negro Revolution. The only revolution in which the goal is a desegregated lunch counter, a desegregated theater, a desegregated park, and a desegregated public toilets. You can sit down next to white folks on the toilet. That's no revolution. Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. The white man knows what a revolution is. He knows that the black revolution is worldwide in scope and in nature. The black revolution is sweeping Asia, sweeping Africa. It's rearing its head in Latin America. The Cuban Revolution, that's a revolution. They overturned the system. Revolution is in Asia. Revolution is in Africa. And the white man is screaming because he sees revolution in Latin America. How do you think he'll react to you when you learn what a real revolution is? You don't know what a revolution is. If you did, you wouldn't use that word. A revolution is bloody. Revolution is hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. And you sitting around here like a knot on these folks, no matter how much they hate me. No, you need a revolution. Who ever heard of a revolution where they lock arms, as Reverend Klieg was pointing out beautifully, singing, "We shall overcome"? Just tell me you don't do that in a revolution. You don't do any singing, you're too busy swinging. It's based on land. A revolutionary wants land so he can set up his own nation, an independent nation. These Negroes aren't asking for no nation. They're trying to crawl back on the plantation. When you want a nation, that's called nationalism. When the white man became involved in a revolution in this country against England, what was it for? He wanted this land so he could set up another white nation. That's white nationalism. The American Revolution was white nationalism. The French Revolution was white nationalism. The Russian Revolution too, yes, it was white nationalism. You don't think so? Why you think Khrushchev and Mao can't get their heads together? White nationalism. All the revolutions that's going on in Asia, in Africa today are based on what? Black nationalism. A revolutionary is a black nationalist. He wants a nation. I was reading some beautiful words by Reverend Cleage pointing out why he couldn't get together with someone else here in the city. Because all of them were afraid of being identified with black nationalism. If you're afraid of black nationalism, you're afraid of revolution. And if you love revolution, you love black nationalism.